Attorneys for the plaintiffs, two educators, say the language is too vague and creates a chilling effect for teachers. Some have already removed materials containing racial topics. The judge's ruling said the law is vague and doesn't actually prevent teaching critical race theory. He says it means a teacher just can't force ideas onto a student. For NPR News, I'm Josie Lenora.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The sexual harassment trial of former Boston City Councilor Felix Arroyo gets underway today with some heavy-duty names expected on the witness stand. The trial stems from an incident that allegedly happened 6 years ago and centers around allegations made by Helani Morales, who worked under Arroyo in the city's Office of Health and Human Services. She filed a lawsuit with the Suffolk Superior Court in 2018, accusing Arroyo of harassing her and pressuring her into a sexual relationship while they worked together. Morales claims Arroyo retaliated against her after she ended the relationship and created a hostile work environment. Expected to take the stand in the trial are former Boston Mayor Marty Walsh and federal judge Mark Wolf. Arroyo has denied all accusations of any wrongdoing. He was fired from his position in 2017 after a month-long investigation. More than 300 Harvard faculty members have signed a letter that was sent to interim president Alan Garber. The letter calls on Garber to negotiate with the pro-Palestine student protesters who've set up an encampment in Harvard Yard. The letter came 1 day after Garber sent a university-wide email that threatened students participating in the occupation with involuntary leaves of absences if they do not stop their participation in the encampment. Sports. Bruins getting ready for their second playoff game with the Panthers in Florida tonight. Puck drops 7:30. Red Sox wrap up their two-game series with the Braves in Atlanta. First pitch is 7:20. 61 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Ooma, a cloud-based phone service for any size business with an automated virtual receptionist, video meetings, and other features to connect to customers and coworkers anywhere. At ooma.com/NPR.
Hey, Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live on this really rainy day from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you. We'll be back at the library on Friday with Doris Kearns Goodwin, number one.
Are you loving this book, by the way?
Yes, it's number one on the bestsellers. It's a great book. It's about the 60s and her relationship with her late husband, Dick Goodwin.
And his relationship with LBJ and
Jackie
RFK
Kennedy.
And Jackie. I mean,
yeah,
it's
great. It's great.
So Donald Trump's election interference. It is not a hush money case, despite what all the news. Look right now, hush money trials. What CNN is
very
saying.
Annoying.
Paying hush money is not illegal. That's not what he's on trial for. In any case, it's underway in a New York courtroom. On a break today, back tomorrow. Stephanie Clifford, that's the formal name of Stormy Daniels, was called to testify yesterday, delivering great detail of their alleged tryst that even the judge acknowledged he could have done without hearing. Trump's legal woes, as you know, are unprecedented for someone who's held the highest political office in the country. First person who served as president ever to be indicted on criminal charges, in this case, accused of falsifying records to cover up $130,000 payment to Clifford just before the 2016 election in an attempt to affect the outcome of that election. If convicted, he could face prison time. Salaciousness aside, it's a crime in and of itself that the trial is not televised. I know I say it every day for America to watch. How much attention are you paying to this trial? Would you be paying more attention if the evening news or your favorite cable station was able to play clips of it? 877-301-8970. I've also done something that I consider to be fairly interesting.
What's that,
Marjorie?
Jim?
I compared yesterday in the life of the three major candidates. That'd be Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and RFK Jr. Do you mind if I go down it briefly?
No, I don't.
And by the way, in the meantime, if you want to weigh in on what your reaction to the trial is, maybe halfway through at 877-301-8970, 6 months from Election Day, we'd love to hear from you. So here it goes. Let's start with Donald Trump. And this is his day, and I used headlines from the Drudge Report this morning. Here are all the headlines. Trump gets spanking in court. Stormy takes stand. Humiliation of the Don. He did not wear a condom. Melania in hiding. Campaign preps for jail. Mayor, meaning of New York, Rikers is ready.
Oh, God.
That's yesterday's day for a guy who right now is the odds-on choice to be the next president of the United States. Then there's the guy running as a third-party candidate. It's RFK Jr.
Yeah.
What we learned this morning, he had a worm in his brain. Now, we would not be making light of this were it not for the fact he appears to be fine. But it's been discussed. It's a dead worm. It's larvae. He had a worm, let me repeat, a worm in his brain. I think
right.
that's all we need to know about him. What?
And the worm ate part of his brain.
It ate part of his brain. That is correct. Before it expired. And then it just expired. The worm in his brain. That is true. By the way, that's not a made-up story. It's not Borowitz. Worm in his brain.
Cognitive problems.
Right. We're not making fun of him. We're just saying, yes, Trump's on trial. He didn't wear a condom. RFK Jr., whatever, worm in his brain. And Joe Biden is doing something a little bit different from those two candidates. He marked Holocaust Remembrance Day with a speech on anti-Semitism. I mean, that's sort of, to me, all you need to know about this race. The number is 877-301-8970 is the number. By the way, my anger about the failure to televise this trial is elevated every single day. Because can I tell you something? I broach this with almost everybody I talk to in the real world, in addition to doing it on the radio. And I am stunned, including some of my smartest, most politically oriented friends, know very few of the details of this case. A lot of my friends still calling it a hush money case. As I said at the beginning, paying hush money is not illegal under New York state law. And it's totally because it's not on television, period.
We got some new details.
What do we have?
We know that the president, at least when he was carrying on with Stormy Daniels' preferred Old Spice aftershave, very popular, and uses Pert Plus shampoo, which kind of surprised me because he's big into his hair. You know, he spends a lot of time. And Pert Plus is kind of a cheap shampoo. Our staff found out about $5 at CVS. It's green. It's kind of not what you would expect if you're like a millionaire, billionaire kind of use fancier shampoo. And we also learned he's not that concerned about safe sex because he was having sex without a condom with a woman who was involved in acting in pornographic movies.
Yeah.
And even though I guess they do use condoms in pornographic movies, I don't know. I think he would have been a little bit nervous about that. We learned something else today, too.
I don't know what that is.
Well, the former president made a big deal about getting a day off to go to Barron's graduation. And apparently he's graduating from someplace in Palm Beach, Florida. Yeah. But the same day, he's going to be the featured speaker at a Republican Party fundraiser in Minnesota.
Well, you know, the question, it's funny you say that because I want to ask Juliette Kayyem this. They made a representation of the court that he wanted the day off to go to his kid's graduation. If he is unable to go to his graduation because he's speaking at that Republican dinner in Minnesota, is he not in contempt of court for having lied to the court? Now, by the way, we don't know if he can go to the graduation in the morning and the thing at night. It appears he cannot, but that's all we know. 877-301-8897. Can I also say one more thing that I want to get Juliette's thoughts on at noon? All of our favorite commentators, including Jeffrey Toobin on CNN last night, were saying the prosecutors went too far in terms of the detail of what happened in this hotel room with Trump and Daniels. It was unnecessary. It may hurt the prosecution's case. Can I say, and Jeffrey Toobin is about 6 million times smarter lawyer than I ever will be. He's dead wrong. The critical issue in this case, there is no question that they messed with the business records, which is a misdemeanor. It only becomes a felony if it's in furtherance of another crime. The Trump lawyer's contention is what it was in furtherance of was not a crime, but he wanted to shield his family, Melania, from the pain.
Correct.
When the prosecutors are arguing, what he wanted to shield was himself from losing an election.
Melania was at home with a newborn baby,
3 months old.
Little Baron, 4 months old, I thought.
4 months, which would be a felony. Yeah. When she testified, I mean this totally seriously, by the way, there's not a punchline here. When she testified about holding up Melania's picture and saying something to Trump like she's really beautiful, and he says, oh, don't worry about her, we don't even sleep in the same room, to me that is powerful evidence against his own lawyer's argument that the reason he was involved in this business fraud was because he wanted to protect his wife and family. I think that totally undercuts that. So with all due respect to Jeffrey Toobin, I think that was remarkably necessary and relevant testimony. We'll see what Juliette Kayyem thinks. Our number is 877-301-8970.
A texter is responding to your juxtaposing the three candidates and says at least the candidate with the dead worm in his brain has an excuse.
Well, that's true. By the way, apparently there was some cognitive damage. In all fairness to him, I mean, he's mostly fine, or else we wouldn't bring it up. Most of the doctors, experts all across the country, thought he had a brain tumor when they saw this dark mark on his brain. And in fact, one doctor calls him on the phone and said, I don't think it's a tumor, I think it's a worm. And it turns out it was a worm, and it was a dead worm, but it was not dead until it had eaten part of his brain. And that, which Marjorie thinks.
It's not funny.
So why are you laughing?
Because the whole thing is just so bizarre.
Having a worm in your brain kind of thing?
Having a worm in your brain.
It's not that.
And he's got a lot of other problems, too. Apparently he's got mercury poisoning from eating too much tuna.
Which you do. You were a tuna fish salad phenom.
I'm concerned that I might have a...
You might have a worm in your brain.
I might have a worm. I might have a worm in my brain,
would
too.
Explain it.
He's also had a lot of heart problems. Been in the hospital a bunch of times. His what would Caroline Kennedy's son be to him? A cousin, I guess. Schlossberg, the son of Caroline Kennedy, has got this whole comedy routine, basically trashing RFK Jr. Yes, and saying that he's using
Caroline
steroids.
Kennedy's son?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Saying he uses steroids.
Well,
and,
he obviously uses steroids.
And he was very upset. Schlossberg was that all the references to his grandfather, JFK, that Kennedy purloined during the Super Bowl ad. Anyway, our number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970, if you want to call or text. Now, one of the texters says that the former president didn't use a condom after he queried Stormy Daniels about STD testing protocols at the adult films in which she was starring.
Yeah.
And was assured that she was A-okay.
Can I clarify something? Because I want to be as fair as possible. Neither Marjorie and I know I speak for you. We're not saying that having a worm in your brain is a disqualifying issue. We can discuss it next week with Art Kaplan. I mean, it's a problem, obviously, but it's not disqualifying. You can be president and have a worm in your brain. You can be a president and serve from jail. So
that's right.
They're not disqualifying. We're just trying to bring you all the news that matters
that uses Pert Plus shampoo for $5 at CVS.
Plus, what do you make of that, by the way?
I just think, well, like I said, I think it's someone that's a billionaire who's got such an interest in his hair. I mean, he got into a big fight with his late wife, Ivana, about, I guess he went out to have he was getting a bald spot in the middle of his head, and he tried to cover it. Well, they got into a big fight about it because I guess they didn't do it right and his head hurt or something like that. I mean, he's very into arranging all his hair on his on
Do you know
top
why?
of his
By
head.
the way, I read a story a couple weeks ago. I have no idea if it's true about why he had the developing bald spot. You didn't read that story?
He had a worm in his brain.
Worm in his brain, yeah. 877-301-8970. Janet in Chestnut Hill, you're first. We're trying to get perceptions of people 6 months out and roughly halfway through this trial. Hi, Janet.
Hi. I just wanted to tell you first that I love your program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And secondly, you're welcome. Secondly, I'm a retired lawyer, and I go out of my way to stay home when the trial's going on and listen to MSNBC and hear the readouts of the testimony. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I think that they've done a great job so far, and I love your analysis about the Jeffrey Toobin comment.
Don't you think I'm right as a lawyer? I mean, that's totally relevant information. Janet, no?
Absolutely, it's turned out to be, it seems.
I think...
What are you going to say?
Sense impression.
Janet, I think there was a lot of concern. I mean, some people are very squeamish about these kinds of, as they call them in this New York Times story, the smuttier parts of this trial. But we did find out a lot of things. That the president answered the door after he invited Ms. Daniels to his palatial Lake Tahoe suite. He was wearing silk pajamas.
Can't you picture that?
Yep.
Believe me, we've talked about it all morning.
When he was rude to her, she playfully spanked him with a rolled-up magazine.
I don't think we need to do this.
And when she asked about his wife, he told her not to worry, as you said before, Jim, that they didn't sleep in the same room. And that was when Trump responded by shaking his head in disgust and muttering "bull" to his lawyers.
To his lawyers, yeah.
And the judge reprimanded that, said he shouldn't be doing those things. The judge seemed to be very concerned about the smuttier sides of this whole thing, too. And
but the judge's position was, he said to Trump's lawyers, I can't believe you're not objecting to this testimony. Why do I have to be the one?
That's right.
Jenna, that was a great call. Thank you for making it. We appreciate it.
Jim,
Call us again.
at one point, Judge Merchant issued his own objection, interrupting Stormy's testimony as she began to describe the sexual position she had
Okay, and you don't need to do that
she
either.
and Mr.
Okay,
Trump
fine, Marjorie.
assumed.
You are so low
And listen,
rent.
I love
It
this
is
line.
what?
Justice Merchant, generally a stoic presence with a tight grip in his courtroom, showed rare exasperation as the testimony veered into a scurrilous direction.
Where's that from? Which one?
And that is from the New York Times.
Is that really?
The paper of record. And the trial took on a circus-like atmosphere. So there you go.
877-301-8970. I guess we have a few things on the table. We talked about a day in the life of three of the candidates yesterday. Trump in a courtroom, RFK Jr. disclosing he had a worm in his brain, and Joe Biden delivering that Holocaust remembrance speech. Slightly different approaches to the world and life. And also, we're roughly halfway through the trial. We had the first caller who's paying close attention. But can I tell you something? As someone,
we're in great shape. United States of America.
You
Great
attended
shape.
a ton of trials
Yes,
as
I
a
did.
reporter.
I love trials.
I did trials
Yeah,
when I was a
that's
young
right.
lawyer kind of thing. The notion that I'm not being critical at all of the caller. She's using whatever resource she has. The notion that somebody reading the transcript on cable TV at night
Yeah, you gotta be
or
there.
following the real-time tweets or posts of the New York Times reporters doesn't do it. You don't get to watch the mannerisms of the defendant,
No.
of the witnesses. How's the jury reacting? Are they taking notes, kind of thing?
You don't get to watch the interaction between the witness and the defendant.
Exactly.
Now, at some points, the way the courtroom is positioned, Trump can't always see the witness. He has to do
Isn't that
leaning.
incredible?
Yeah, that is bizarre. He has to lean kind of over to see the witness, but there is some, I guess if you're the witness, like Stormy Daniels or Hope Hicks, you like that because you're not looking right at the guy. But that's a little weird, I think, generally speaking. You also can't judge the credibility of people.
Exactly
I mean, they
right.
talked about how
You're
Stormy
so
Daniels was
right.
talking really, really quickly. She was making a lot of jokes, and they didn't land. They weren't very funny. And she talked about being petrified of the president and all this kind of stuff. Let's go to Maria in Haverhill. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Maria. Hi,
Hello.
Maria.
I wanted to state very clearly that my daughter and I are very opposed to Trump. He is a psychopath, and I'm speaking clinically. He's a psychopath. And his being, quote, president of the United States would be a devastation. It would be the end of this country. I'm very troubled that the average American has so little capacity to understand how dangerous he is. He has obsessions with people with enormous power and people who are not neo-Nazis.
I think that's true.
difficult
And
to-
by the way, speaking of Nazis, we never allowed people early in the Trump reign to bring up Hitlerian references or fascism or Nazism. Read Adam Gopnik from The New Yorker was with us a couple of weeks ago. He wrote an incredibly powerful piece, a review of a book that was about the rise of Hitler, and the comparisons between that and the rise of Donald Trump were just breathtaking. Maria, thanks for the call. 877-301-8097. You haven't said, in your life, do you not find, and don't humor me, do you not find that people are talking a lot less about something this important, the first criminal trial ever of a former president?
I think we've been numb to it. I mean, I
don't think it's just numb.
His craziness has become normalized. People don't think it's bizarre. I mean, he's in criminal contempt. He's a criminal already. He was held in criminal contempt for all those repeated trashing of the witnesses and the people that are on the stand. And I don't think he's going to go to Rikers Island. I think that's a step too far. But I wouldn't be stunned if he ends up in a holding cell, if this judge runs out of his patience.
That caller had the best idea, which I think also mutes the whole potential political benefit from being jailed and being a martyr, is the house arrest thing. If the judge feels that the fines don't do the trick, which is what he intimated a few days ago, then put him under house arrest, except when he's attending the trial.
Well, you notice, since the judge talked about jail, you know what Trump's not doing?
Well, he did. He had another violation of a gag order he found yesterday.
Oh, yesterday?
The 10th
After
violation.
the jail? After the jail
Yes,
thing?
when he said, that was the whole thing.
Okay.
And he reserved it where he said in a statement, they're all Democrats on the jury, 95% of the jury are Democrats, and he found that to be a violation of the gag order. Michael from East Greenwich texts in and says, silk pajamas, Do I see more worms? That's actually an excellent point.
Philip from West Dennis says, I want RFK Jr. as my fishing buddy. I am always running out of worms. He could be my backup.
Can you imagine finding out you had a worm in your brain kind of thing? That's really big.
No, I could not imagine. And the eating part of your brain and saying you had cognitive problems. Now he claims to be better now with the cognitive problems, but he's had heart problems. He's been in and out of the hospital a bunch of times. He's got a lot of problems.
Have we ever interviewed him together? I've had him on television a bunch of times about his environmental work long before this.
He was a very good environmental lawyer.
He was really an impressive environmental lawyer. Jamie in Middleborough, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So I would like to remind you guys, I'm going back a few minutes, what you're speaking about with Trump's hair.
Yeah.
Do you remember his first wife, Ivana, wrote a book, and she described him coming home from his hair transplant and being enraged because he was in so much pain. This is in the book.
That's right.
He tore out a chunk of her hair, and then he raped her. I guess we can call it marital rape, but rape is rape. John Jr. was home at the time and didn't speak to his father for a few years after that. She later retracted that statement after he became president. So I just wanted to remind you guys of that little juicy tidbit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie, for the call. By the way, if I know it's not the hair transplant is not the critical part of the story. It's a reaction. Biden has obviously had hair transplants too, and that is perfectly fine. You choose to do it. Tom Brady's probably had hair transplants.
On a day like this, I'm getting texts about Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah,
on a day like this. There you go.
In any case, here is Sue. Well, let's take a break, Marjorie, and then we'll continue.
Okay, we are talking about a day in the life of the presidential trial that's going on in New York City right now. We're going to keep talking about it until for a few more minutes anyway. The number is 877-301-8970. Have you been paying attention as best you can to this trial, which we cannot hear or see? Are the sort of Daniels yesterday?
The world takes you outside your borders and connects you with the most important events happening all across this big blue marble.
We introduce you to memorable people whose stories will stay with you for a lifetime. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler, global news and inspiring voices that will keep you on top of the world.
Listen each weekday.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store on Mass Ave in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of contemporary and traditional outdoor furniture, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. Seasons4.com. And MBA Builders, partnering with clients to help bring the home they envision to life through their design-build approach. MBA Builders, building relationships. Learn more at buildwithmba.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library on Friday, Doris Kearns Goodwin is going to join us for an extended discussion, both about her book and get her take on the state of the world and our country in 2024. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the election interference trial for Donald Trump. Experts say roughly halfway through. What's your reaction the day after the first part of Stormy Daniels' testimony, beginning of cross-examination? And also I did a comparison of yesterday's day, what we learned about Donald Trump, RFK Jr. with a worm in his brain, and Joe Biden speaking on Holocaust Remembrance Day. By the way, our team, this always makes me nervous, says they have found RFK Jr.'s new campaign song. So let's hear a little bit of it. Apparently, there you go. 877-301-8970.
Texter wants to know if there's a vaccine to protect against brain worms. Roy from Rhode Island says the worm in RFK Jr.'s brain certainly gives justification for the anti-vax crowd to pop those ivermectin pills. And apparently, he ate a lot of perch and tuna, and that's why he claims he has high mercury levels. Yeah. But when he got into this crusade about vaccines, it started with thimerosal, the mercury-containing preservatives.
I didn't know that.
Has been used in some vaccines, and contrary to what people say that he's not an anti-vaxxer, he was crusading for a long time about the rise, which has been just proven between autism and the MMR vaccine that children take. Anyway, 877-301-8970. Dina from Salem, New Hampshire. What do you think, Dina?
Hi, I personally am glad that the trial is about all the channels because this country is in such a state of divisiveness that I would make it 10 times worse. And
Hey, Dina, this is a horrible connection. Let me just, are you saying you're avoiding coverage of this because we're divided enough already and this just adds to the divisiveness? Yeah. Well, you know, Dina, I hear you, and I think probably factually that is true. But I would argue that when a former president of the United States and a very possible next president of the United States is in his first of 4 potential trials for violations of criminal law, not only should we not be avoiding it, we have an obligation to pay attention to it. So I hear you, and you're not alone, I know, and I respect your opinion, but I got to let you go because the connection's bad.
Well,
but the fact that everybody is not immersed in this, frankly, drives me crazy.
The reason, even though Fox didn't cover the January 6 hearings, which was kind of a disgrace, but the reason it would be helpful to have this covered is because you can see it with your own eyes. You can hear it. You don't have any intermediaries, and we have a lot of distrust of the media, obviously, and a lot of people, you know, would not believe what was going on in this trial. And by the way, we get these all the time, and people concerned about juries being on camera. They're never on camera.
No judge has ever allowed.
No.
By the way, there was a case, I can't remember what it was, where mistakenly, I think it might have been in Massachusetts, where the camera ended up on a juror, and I can't remember if they declared a mistrial, but that was the only case I've ever heard in a state court, in any court, where a juror, by mistake in that case.
They position the cameras a certain way, and they're never allowed to, and there may, as you just said, be a mistake occasionally, but they're not showing jurors. Fran from Methuen, thank you for calling.
Hello, Fran.
Hi there.
Hey.
So I am obsessed with this trial. My guiding lights are MSNBC, Andrew Weissman, and Lisa Rubin. And Lisa Rubin had a fabulous argument last night with regard to the fact that he was a 60-year-old male having sex with a 27-year-old woman, unprotected sex. Trump wears the DAP decision on his lapel.
You know, Fran, I have to say, we got to let you go too. The connections are atrocious. One of the things that Fran said is an MSNBC commentator mentioned a point that Trump was 60 at the time. She was 27. Frankly, that does nothing for me, except the whole thing is sordid. The issue is, that's not really relevant. I'm not saying you said it was, to his alleged criminality. It's an interesting side note, but what is it?
Well, none of the sex is related to the
Well, I don't agree with that.
Except that it's the reason this all began.
And it undercuts, as I said before, this argument that his lawyers are making is that, of course, they falsified the records, but it was to protect his family, not to interfere in the election. So beyond that, I
mean, you could argue, as the judge was arguing, that we didn't really know, we needed to know about the missionary position of the condom.
Well, he didn't let her do it. The missionary, he didn't let her do.
I think he commented after she already said it, yeah. She spoke really, really quickly, implying that it was all gratuitously vulgar.
You know what he did? He was consciously saying, I want to hear it, and then as soon as she says it, I'll say, she can't say it, and it'll be too late. Isn't that what you do if you're in that? I mean, if you're the judge, tell the truth.
I don't know. I don't know. Apparently, she talked really, really fast, too. It was hard to understand, so the court reporter was having a tough time. They were late in the day trying to transcribe the tapes because she spoke so quickly.
Zoe says Fran's connection is improved. So, Fran from Methuen, welcome back. Hi.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I am obsessed with this trial. MSNBC, Lisa Rubin, and Andrew Weissman are my guiding lights with regard to my feelings. And Lisa brought up the fact we have a 60-year-old male having unprotected sex with a 27-year-old woman. What about the whole issue of abortion? Trump wears the DOT decision on his lapel like a banner. How many women in Louisiana who've had unprotected sex need an abortion? They can't get an abortion. I mean, Trump is a serial sexual predator. We'll go back to E. Jean Carroll. We go back to the Access Hollywood case. I mean, where do we end with this guy? And in the end, I just want to say anyone who votes for Trump is as morally bankrupt as he is.
Fran, thanks. I'm glad you hung on. All those points are politically relevant, regardless of your position. They're legally have nothing to do, and I'm not saying that she was saying they did, with the guilt or lack of guilt of the defendant, in this case, Donald Trump.
You know, I love the fact
877-301-8970. I'm sorry, what?
that Fran talked about the moral bankruptcy of the president. He's compared himself to Nelson Mandela, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Some of the people that have been done horrendous wrongs, and one of his most consistent voting bloc is the Christian, supposedly Christian conservatives.
And so how do they feel about this? And I know your position is they don't care what he does as long as he's at least allegedly, or at least in his actions, anti-abortion, anti-choice. So when they hear this testimony, they don't hear when they read about testimony, it doesn't make any difference.
We all make mistakes, and he has repented, Jim, of his sins. Yeah. Let's go to Andy in Sudbury. What do you think, Andy?
Hello, Andy.
I have 3 separate short comments.
Please.
The first comment is, it would be great if the worm in his brain was a bookworm, because he might actually read something for the first time in his life.
Well, actually, he's very smart. It's a good line, but I've spent time with him. He's a really smart guy. He's just wrong on a bunch of things. Next, Andy.
Yes. The second comment I want to make is that even your own radio station, by the way, and I've been a devotee of your radio station for a zillion years, and I'm a listener, sponsor, and supporter and
Thank
stuff.
you.
Goes around constantly referring to it as a hush money.
I agree. NPR does it too. It's driving me nuts. You are totally right.
They need to stop it. I think you should get the word across to them.
I agree with you.
And the third comment is one that's going to be extraordinarily unpopular with you, but as a criminal defense lawyer for 42 years and a true believer in open courtrooms and open public trials, I have to disagree that I believe that in this particular case, I don't believe the camera should be in the courtroom, although I do believe there should be audio equipment. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe in cameras being in the courtroom, because the moment there are cameras in the courtroom, as the O.J. trial established and all the high-profile cases established, everybody spends their time mugging to the cameras and putting on an act. And the whole concept of the criminal trial and the significance of it and what's going on disappears along the way.
Okay, let me say to
Andy,
you...
I just want to say, I hear that all the time. We have to have the O.J. trial was so unique. I mean, with the sex, with the NFL, with the whole fame of O.J. Simpson. I've covered so many trials that were televised. Everybody forgets. It just isn't true. And as a defense lawyer, I'm surprised you'd even say that, because I don't think true.
Also,
at all.
Cameras at that time were evident. Cameras now in courtrooms, as Nancy Gertner, who testified in front of Congress, is the only federal judge in support of cameras in federal courtrooms, says you don't even know they're there. You forget about it. And I agree with Andy, with all due respect. The fact that people who share your position have to cite a case from decades ago it speaks to the fact that there have been virtually no problems since. And even if there were, we are entitled to be there. It is the people of the United States, or in this case, the people of Manhattan, against Donald Trump. It's a public trial. You can't get in the courtroom. So the only way you can get in is through video or, well, you say audio, which is where Chuck Todd is. I'd take audio, but we're entitled to video. Andy, thanks for your call, though. We appreciate it.
And just one last thing. Courtrooms are public in general, right?
Exactly.
If you have a big enough courtroom, in that Karen Reed case that's going on over there, I guess they're in a little courtroom, so it's not that much room. But generally, there's room for a couple hundred people in a courtroom. And, television obviously was not around when they built most of these courtrooms, but they've always been open. People have always been performing to a certain degree. I would say they're performing for the jury, especially the lawyers are anyway, more than anybody else.
We got to go.
We got to go.
We're going to talk about a lot of these things with Juliet and Carol Rose as the day goes along.
Okay, we just go back one more time. We get the 3 candidates. Just sum up as we leave here.
Well, just read from the Drudge Report. Mm-hmm. He did not wear a condom. Melania in hiding. The mayor says Rikers is ready. RFK Jr. has got a worm in his brain, a dead worm in his brain, and that's okay. And Joe Biden marked the Holocaust Remembrance Day with a speech on anti-Semitism. So that is how the 3 major candidates spent yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be
Coming
here.
up after a quick break, we're going to talk with Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young on this dramatic vote curtailing Airbnb rentals in Nantucket. And we'll talk about where the congestion pricing is coming to Boston and this list of these hot tech companies that the Globe is doing. All that and more with Shirley Young from the Boston Globe. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News and broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, in her latest play, Dale Orlander Smith looks at the human condition and how we're apt to find meaning in life when we're confronted by death. And we all know the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, but what do we know about the woman who created it? Chasing Beauty, a new biography, reveals a woman of privilege and purpose with a penchant for art. Author Natalie Dykstra joins us. That's today on The Culture Show at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org. And MFS Investment Management. For 100 years, MFS has been committed to helping investors, investment professionals, and institutions build secure futures. You can find active investing strategies and insights at mfs.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, broadcasting live from the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library on Friday with Doris Kearns Goodwin. We cannot wait. Joined now by Shirley Young, Boston Globe business columnist and host of the Say More podcast. Hey, Shirley.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Mark.
Nice to see you.
Hello, Shirley Young. So I guess they've been fighting for quite a while now in Nantucket about short-term rentals, Airbnb, the people that don't like them saying it's changing the whole complexion of neighborhoods out there, the people that do like them saying the economy is based on this now because there are so many businesses that cater to these short-term rentals. So what happened?
So last night, it was the fourth such vote for the town of Nantucket on whether to restrict, legalize or regulate short-term rentals, and this time Nantucket voted down an effort to regulate short-term rentals in like Airbnb because it is an economic driver, and so
when you said regulate, I think a better word is allow almost everywhere. Isn't that really regulate? But allow in virtually every district of Nantucket.
Well, they voted down, right? They voted to allow it, and so and I guess voted down broad legalization, I should say, of short-term rentals, and now it goes to I guess the zoning board, right, over there to kind of figure out to write some rules around it. So it looks like it's not going to affect this summer. It may affect next year. But it keeps on going back and forth.
But there's a housing-related component, obviously, which is the primary reason we've mentioned it 2 days in a row. And while they were voting no, not even close to the two-third margin, the people in Marblehead were doing exactly what the people in your hometown of Milton did and voting no on the MBTA housing zoning law.
Right, that happened. I mean, it seems like all across Massachusetts, people like to be up in arms about housing rules, and so I think, what is this now? Now Marblehead joins Milton, Marshfield, and Littleton as communities that have voted down this new housing law designed to create more housing, multifamily housing, and but I wonder with Marblehead and the others that will vote. That may also vote down the state housing law to abide by it. I wonder if they're waiting for the SJC ruling in October, because the Attorney General has now sued Milton to comply. The SJC won't hear the case until October.
But we discussed this, I don't know, with the governor or somebody the other day, whoever we discussed it with. Part of the problem, the point was made in a Globe story, is because the SJC is dilly-dallying on this, just like the Supreme Court of the United States is dilly-dallying on the immunity issue with Trump. Most town meetings in the 100-plus remaining communities that have to vote will happen before they know what the SJC has determined. Right. It's sort of like voting in the dark, like the American people will be doing in November as well.
Right, and so I think that's why a lot of them will vote no. Because they're going to vote no, wait, see what the SJC does, and then go back to
I just
vote
want
again.
to clarify, to make sure that we're stating this Nantucket thing. My understanding of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what they said on Nantucket is that a previous ruling stands that says a house can't be primarily used as a rental. In other words, you have to, the owners have to live there at least some of the time.
Right.
And now that they're going to, so that stands, and they have to go before the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals on whether it can be used, a house can be used most of the time as a primary residence and some of the time as a short-term rental.
Right, so it's still kind of, they're still working out the details, right.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it sounds like the summer might be okay.
Yes, they did definitely say they shouldn't worry about this summer.
Yeah, and so it will be interesting what happens from here on out. Will there be lawsuits? Will there be more, other challenges?
Yeah.
So I think it will be uncertain for some time.
So yesterday we had Mayor Wu here, and based on a story that was in your paper by Taylor Dolvin, who's the transportation writer, saying New York is about to have congestion pricing, $15 or whatever it is downtown, depending on the hours you enter downtown starting in June. It's not even on the table here in Massachusetts, in Boston. We asked Mayor Wu why it wasn't on the table, and here's what she had to say.
From my perspective, it does feel like there's a greater reliability and accessibility of non-driving options in those places, which are known for having sort of very comprehensive public transportation systems. It ultimately is still connected to transportation reliability, and we have to do more, and we have to make sure he has the resources to do that, so it should all be on the table. But congestion pricing is a different conversation when there's a very convenient alternative to driving.
I should be clear what she was talking about. I didn't set that up well. When she said in those places, meaning London and New York, that have congestion pricing, they have better transportation systems. But she went on to say that every option should be on the state task force about transportation funding. We specifically asked her about the proposal that upset Governor Healy about tolls on the northern border, and she said absolutely it should be on the agenda as well.
Yeah, and I agree with Mayor Wu that everything should be on the table. And there is a big concern about doing congestion pricing in Boston because our public transit system is not nearly as good as what New York and London have. And the concern is if you start charging an extra $15 to get into Boston during rush hour, that's going to have a disproportionate effect on low-income commuters. And so they've got to find a way to help those who can't afford the $15 price tag to get into Boston.
Well, I think her point, and I think yours, is when the T is more reliable and better, if Phil Lang is able to achieve his goals, then you could look into something like congestion pricing, because low and moderate income people, everybody, but particularly low and moderate, would have an option.
That's right. And so, but yeah, when hasn't this come up before?
Which?
Before the pandemic, congestion pricing? Didn't
we broached it with Charlie Baker, and he didn't like it.
Yeah.
And he didn't like it, by the way.
No, I thought there was even went through the legislature. He vetoed it.
He vetoed even a pilot or a study or something.
Did he veto the study? He didn't greenlight the study?
He did not agree to it.
He vetoed the study?
I'm 90% sure. Jamie, wherever you are, one of our colleagues, please check to make sure we're not disparaging Governor Baker by mistake.
But then the pandemic happened, and then nobody, then the traffic disappeared for a couple of years.
By the way, in fairness to Baker, because we were pretty critical of him for not even allowing a pilot thing to happen, assuming we're right about that, his argument was exactly what you and I think Mayor Wu are talking about, which is for low and moderate income people, if there's not a viable transportation alternative, and the T is surely not that yet, then you shouldn't be doing it. So,
but you should study it. Come on. What's the harm of studying it?
I agree.
We covered that Milton isn't happy about these things, and some of the other towns you mentioned aren't happy about this change in the zoning so multiple housing can be built. But I don't see why there's such a big pushback to the so-called granny flats. The owners of single-family houses can add apartments to their property. And this is all wrapped up in the governor statewide versus local control. But what's the problem? And the select board in town in Harvard accused Healy of a breach of faith for proposing.
You're kidding with that question, right? It's about power.
I know, but it just, I mean, how much power
How dare Governor Healy do something for housing without the permission of every city and town official? That's all it's about.
But I don't tend to think of selectmen as particularly powerful people. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something.
Well, it's the same reason why Milton and other towns are voting down MBTA communities law, right? It is about local control. And they don't want to give it up. I know it seems so innocent, the ADUs.
Well, I guess when
I think you're both missing the boat.
What?
What is
For
it?
Healy's proposal to become law, state legislators have to approve it.
Right.
State legislators go home and cower in the corner when the local selectmen or city councilors or those sort of things say, how dare you vote to take away our power to decide whether we want a granny flat, an accessory dwelling unit, or you. It's all about control.
You know, a couple of things, because all the people that live in these towns realize that their children are not going to be able to live in these towns because they can't afford it. They probably can't even live in the state of Massachusetts because they can't afford it because the housing crisis is so acute. And I don't know, if you get a nice backyard and you want to build a 900 square foot little granny flat back there, I guess I don't see that.
But I'm sorry, but what they would say, the local officials,
want to be able to
is
decide
I
it.
will then approve it.
But
If
the
it makes
problem
sense,
is-
we'll approve it.
But
We don't,
I think you might say, and maybe I'm wrong, is that in this emergency
Exactly.
situation,
That's what Healy's saying.
we have to rise above
Exactly.
our little backyard.
You think they will?
dispute. I hope so. I hope so, because we're losing. It's ridiculous. You can't buy a house in Boston for what, less than $700 grand now?
700,
grand,
maybe
I
$900,000
mean, who makes
now.
that kind of money?
Who wrote that piece? Was it Chesto that wrote the piece in the paper saying that her energy proposals, her
Yes,
housing
yes, John
proposals
Chesto.
are all falling prey, just like Mayor Wu's proposals that
Right.
we discussed with her yesterday on the real estate transfer tax and liquor licenses are all in the hands of these people in Beacon Hill.
Right, housing and energy are her housing and energy goals are running afoul of the locals, and even one of the Mass Municipal Association, I think a state commission wanted to fast track some of the clean energy permitting, and they didn't like the idea of a mandate. They said mandate to mandate.
Wait, can I
no sense of the crisis that
Excuse
we're
me.
in.
It
None.
is so much worse than you're talking about.
Doesn't your buddy run the Mass
No, he
Municipal
left. Jeff
Association?
Beckwith. He ran it for
Okay.
30 years. He retired.
Okay.
But he was terrific, by the way. Let me just say that. Even though he was maybe wrong on a few of these local issues. Let me just say this. Far worse than the accessory dwelling units, which we mandated under our housing bond bill. Also in that bond bill, as we discussed with the governor and with Mayor Wu yesterday, is a real estate transfer tax for sales of either $1 million in one of their proposals, $2 million in the other.
Boston, yeah.
Now, here's what's incredible about this, about legislators' resistance. We don't know what they're going to do. It is not a mandate, unlike the accessory dwelling units. It provides an option. And if the local officials don't want to pass it, they don't pass it, and they're still opposed to it.
You know what I guess the problem is here is that those of us who are not millionaires and billionaires need to be on the back of our local legislators. That's all there is to it, because I think people generally, regular Joe and Janes, are very concerned about rental prices here and housing prices.
You're right.
So they just have, you just have to harass it. 617-722-2000 is the number at the State House. You ask for if you don't know, and a lot of us don't, who our state senator or state representative is, you just have to harass them because they're not going to do anything. And the other thing is, they hide the way they vote on so many of these issues up there at the State House that you can't even find out. That's another disgrace, the way your representative or your senator voted.
They hide the votes?
They hide
Well,
the
in
vote.
committees.
They make
Committee
it really
votes,
hard to,
yes.
yeah, they make it really hard to figure out. I mean, your legislature can say they voted A when they voted C because their votes get disguised in these committees.
Well, also in the full Senate or House chamber, what they often do when they want to disguise their vote is they do roll call. They don't do roll call votes. They do voice votes.
Yeah.
And then everybody's able to say, no matter who they're talking to, I voted yes or I voted no. By the way, our crack colleagues from the State House News, our colleagues checked out State House News Service 2023. Lawmakers have twice approved creation of a commission to study congestion pricing. It has never become law in large part due to their procrastination. One measure, though, died when Governor Baker vetoed it after the term ended. So he did veto it.
So he did veto it.
He vetoed
So we
one,
never
at least
had a
one
study.
effort. Never had a study.
Now, did a private group do a study?
What?
Did another group do a study for
I don't
us?
know, but I don't know what the answer
We
is.
don't
But
need the state to do a study.
you know, if I
we
recall,
can get another group to do a study.
Am I not right about this? Charlie Baker, when we discussed it with him, can you check this too, Jamie? I'm 90% sure on our show said that the London thing was a disaster. And then I think the
But it's
next
not.
day, the Globe wrote a story
saying it wasn't.
contradicting what he said after having spoken to authorities in London, that in fact it's worked. And by the way, I don't know if we explained this adequately. It's a fee that you're mandated to pay within certain hours if you drive downtown.
It's like a rush hour. Yeah,
the
peak hour.
solution is
It's
either
like a
don't
peak hour
drive
pricing,
downtown, take alternate transportation, or if you're in business, have your truckers deliver the goods late at night if you don't want to pay the fee. What are you laughing
I just got a
about?
text from somebody that says, when a town votes not to follow the law, the next day the T should no longer stop in that town.
I like that, actually.
Very clever idea. That's
That
right.
is a
Just
good
go,
idea.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
that.
that's right. Just go right through. Although a lot of the towns have agreed with us. The ones that are on the T, they have agreed with us. Brookline agreed to it.
Yes,
the
vast majority of towns have agreed
But you know,
to comply.
it's just we're in an emergency here between the climate and the price of housing, and there seems to be everybody's kind of lollygagging along like it's no big deal, no rush or anything, and poor people that are trying to. I mean, $3,000, $4,000 a month for rents for 2- and 3-bedroom apartments. Are you kidding me? I don't know what people are supposed to do. And you know what else? One of the big studies, I was so, I felt validated when I read this. That, you know, people think, oh, the big cause of homelessness, mental illness, drug addiction and stuff. And that is one of the problems. But the places with the biggest homeless problems are also places with the highest rents.
Yes, that's Boston, that's Seattle, that's L.A.,
San Francisco.
Yep.
It's a lot of regular people who are living in their cars because they can't afford the rent.
Okay, so our colleagues looked this up. 2019, it's completely cordoned off. This is Charlie Baker speaking about London on our show. And their congestion, they're a top 2 or 3 in the world player when it comes to congestion. But the Globe the next day, London officials, quote, strongly dispute Baker's arguments, and studies show the charge resulted, the congestion charge in London, in a 30% decrease in vehicles entering the zone.
Okay,
so,
let's talk about Amy Tan.
Well, before I do that, I want to talk about the lead in Amy Tan. I told you this. I went to a great thing that GBH did to celebrate AAPI
Heritage Month,
which is May. And they had this Professor Kim from Harvard doing the interview with Celeste Ng. I've never heard Celeste Ng speak before.
Great.
And she was brilliant. The interviewer, the professor, was brilliant. And one of the things they talked about, which made me think of you, was, you know, there was a time, I think Celeste Ng said this, when it was Amy Tan and nobody else.
Yep.
There were no other prominent Asian writers.
Yes.
And they're both celebrating the fact that there were so many.
Yes.
Now.
And Amy Tan and I talked about that too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
oh,
we did
tell
talk
us
about it.
about your interview.
So Amy Tan has a new book out. It is the first one that she's written that's not about Chinese culture or Chinese heritage. It's called, it's about birds.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so Amy is the author of a celebrated novel, debut novel, The Joy Luck Club, and came out in 1989. And I remember reading it, and I was 18, 19 years old, and I told her this, that, you know, that was the first time in my life that I felt seen reading that book. It's a story of an intergenerational story of Chinese immigrant mothers and their relationships with their American-born daughters. You know, they're often playing mahjong, and I was telling her, you know, that was my family. You know, I remember my parents, my grandparents, they're playing mahjong, and they're talking about their lives that they had before they came to America. And so, and I remember going to the movie theater and seeing the movie Joy Luck Club, but she was, I mean, there was probably just a handful, maybe 2 or 3, but she was really for someone of my generation. I'm a Gen Xer, I'm 51 now. I mean, I still remember Amy Tan and reading that book and what it meant to me. And so it was amazing. Imagine, such a big moment for me to meet her in person. She was in Cambridge on her book tour, and we recorded a podcast with her in person. And so this is
when is that dropping?
It's dropping tonight.
Tonight,
and so you just have some clips. So you guys, you just get a
we
little
do.
preview.
We do. This is, by the way, the book. She's a great artist. I mean, she's drawing
the bird
these,
book.
Yeah, the bird book.
These owls in different positions and other birds. She spent 10 hours a day.
Yeah, hours every day.
Yes.
8 hours a day, observing the birds in her backyard. Was it the bird? Is it the backyard Bird Chronicles? Is that
I don't
right?
know.
The birds?
I don't know what it is, but I should know what it is.
We'll look it up while you play the sound.
Anyways, it's so she's been journaling, and journaling is a combination of, you know, taking, you know, writing notes every day and sketches, and she's an amazing artist.
Okay, we're running out of time here, so I want to be able to hear the sound from Amy Tan, from your podcast with Amy Tan. Here it is.
Wait, fiction writing isn't fun for you?
Fiction writing is a torment. Oh my God! But fiction writing is so deeply satisfying. You work through this agony in these pages, and you throw pages away, and you keep you're muddled and something finally clears and you write something that is so true, perfectly true for you and how you see this, and you have a thrilling feeling, this, some people might call it an epiphany, but a connection to your higher self, whatever it is, it just makes you feel connected in a way, and it's the greatest high I could ever feel.
I love hearing her voice.
Yeah.
I've never heard her voice before.
I can't wait to listen to this.
She's amazing.
And I love that she says how writing is hard, because people have no idea how hard it is. You know how hard it is.
I
don't
do.
you? Yeah.
Great to see you, Shirley.
Shirley, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
We're speaking with business columnist Shirley Young from the Boston Globe. Say More pod on. All that ahead on Boston Public Radio 89.7.
GR's Jackie Northam has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Israeli military spokesman Admiral Daniel Hagari brushed aside reports that the Biden administration held back sending about 3,500 bombs to Israel. He says the scope of U.S. military aid since the beginning of the war is unprecedented in the history of Israel. The majority of withheld weapons were 2,000-pound bombs, which could have a
$95 billion foreign aid bill, which included $26 billion in aid and relief for Israel and Gaza. President Biden heads to the key swing state of Wisconsin today to announce a new $3.3 billion private investment in the community of Racine. NPR's Tamara Keith reports it's part of a pattern of Biden touting job creation, but with a twist.
In his first year in office, former President Donald is that he has been more effective at bringing jobs back to the U.S. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
The World Health Organization is reporting a cholera outbreak in Kenya. It says so far, local officials have detected 44 cases of the waterborne disease. Kenya's been getting a lot of rain. Downpours have led to deadly floods, especially in the eastern part of the country. More than 250,000 people have been displaced there. Local authorities are worried the damaging impact on infrastructure will help cholera and other waterborne diseases spread across Kenya. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Police arrested more than 60 protesters at UMass Amherst last night following the reestablishment of a Gaza encampment on campus. That's according to reporting from UMass's student newspaper, the Daily Collegian. The university has not confirmed the number of students taken into custody. Many of the detained protesters were initially transported to the university's arena, the Mullins Center. Earlier in the day, student Sam Martinez said she wanted UMass to disclose and divest from any investments or partnerships with arms makers.
A big thing is divesting from war profiteers and divesting from a genocide in general. A big focus has been around Raytheon because it's such a big weapons contributor to Israel.
UMass Amherst Board of Trustees has agreed to consider a student petition calling for divestment from defense firms at their next board meeting, which takes place in June. Only one city in the United States where people can watch the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series, and that city just happens to be Boston. The international competition returns to the seaport on June 7th and 8th as the only U.S. stop of the series. It's also the 100th stop of the diving series since it started back in 2009. The Red Bull Diving Series will travel to 8 cities across the globe, starting in Athens, Greece, May 26, ending November 10th in Sydney, Australia. Boston is the second stop in the series. The event is free. It's open to the public, and if I'm right, they dive off the Institute of Contemporary Art building. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. And one more time, when we're back here in the library on Friday, we're going to be joined by the great writer Doris Kearns Goodwin. You know her from all the great books she's written about LBJ and the Kennedys and the Roosevelts and Lincoln. Now she's written a great book about the 60s and her love affair with with her late husband, Dick Goodwin. It's going to be great.
Can't wait. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. It's brilliant.
great.
2 things, by the way, they just erased it. Backyard Bird Chronicles is the name of Amy Tan's book.
Okay.
And one of the preliminary things, we almost never recognize a birthday, but if you have a birthday and you come to the library with a balloon that's about the size of a small planet, we have no choice. Jeff from Cambridge is celebrating his birthday here.
Hi, Jeff.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Jeff from
birthday.
And let me
Cambridge.
just say, that is a really cheap stunt with the balloon, but a happy birthday anyway. We're joined now at
Is that
BBA
you? Is it you? Congratulations.
Okay, I think we did enough with that.
I
Thank
like
you.
Jeff. He's got a
fine.
balloon.
Okay, fine. And you're from Cambridge, right? We're joined now at the Boston Public Library, but that voice was Juliette Kiams. Juliette is the former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Hey, Juliette.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
And a special shout out to Jeff.
So, Juliette Kimes, you are our security mom. We've been having these campus protests all across the country. What do you have to say about the way they organize these, preparedness angle, the security angles? What do you think?
Okay, so
Could you move your mic up about an inch?
Yes, it's been rough
A little
out there.
lower.
Little lower.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
Is mine good, Jim? I think so.
I said yes. Okay, so it's we're going to take the emotion out of it. We're going to. And I feel so weird that I have to say this, but I've been accused of it. I am obviously opposed to anti-Semitism and hate and violence. Let me just put it there. So now let's just take a deep breath. The colleges and universities, as you know from previous conversations, I've spent the last 3 weeks advising with my consulting hat on, and I think we are at the outliers now, which is very good. We're seeing the outliers in many ways, which is there's some level of protest. You have to make sure it's safe, make sure it doesn't have sight line or hearing line interruptions of graduation. You have a communication strategy that gives students off ramps, and then you have the consequences for those who choose to stay. Harvard did it interestingly, and I think in a good way. You don't immediately have to go to jail. Some of these students will view that as a badge of honor. You take away their student ID, their ability to unpack from their dorm rooms, their final grades, their capacity to possibly graduate. Make it hurt where they're making it hurt.
You're obviously not one of the 300 faculty members who signed the letter.
I don't sign letters.
Trashing Alan Garber, the interim president, for doing exactly what you support.
No, what's the option? They are in front of where you would have graduation. And for a long period of time, this would have been fine. But I don't... everyone sort of makes a point and then sticks to it. And I think it's much better to look at the totality of circumstances and say, actually, this date for Harvard is a different date. That's your big graduation in which lots and lots of people come, parents, grandparents. And it's not like crazy to think of that date as different than the week before or even the week after. Now, I might quibble around the margins of both the communication strategy and then some of the things they've done in terms of closing up the yard. But I have no problem with it. Also, I don't sign anything. Everyone's always looking for my name on stuff. Let me just say it again. I don't sign anything. It's like a rule. It's helped me in my life. Now, let me say one thing about UCLA.
Yes.
There is now growing evidence that a number of prominent Jewish Americans or Jewish groups are starting to pay for counter-protesters. I don't like that any more than I'd like, outside groups paying for protesters on the Palestinian side. I think it was Politico had a story. That is just dangerous. And I think what we're seeing with what happened at UCLA, which, depending on at what moment you capture it, at least we know at the moment that these counter-protesters came in to beat out of the Palestinian protesters. The Palestinian protesters were asleep peaceful, unarmed. And it took...
And the police did nothing.
Did nothing.
Yes.
For
So
hours.
the chancellor is reviewing it now, as he should. And I just think it's a really bad example to be using by groups that say, well, there's a lot of hate out there. I just think there is hate out there. And as I started, I do not condone hate, but there's also something else, which is lawful protest, and in many instances, peaceful protest. And if it's unlawful, make it clear when it's unlawful. And I think the changes that we've seen by colleges and universities that we're leading with law enforcement is a good change that I've been talking about now for 3 weeks.
Well,
I just
I have
didn't
to say,
get it.
I'm not sure I agree with you. You're the expert. But let me say one thing. That
About
I
which
feel
one? About the
about
penalties?
the cops, about the penalties. But this is, to me, the most important thing. And this is in no way lessening the importance of your position on this. I firmly believe, in light of the, in my opinion, abject cowardice on the part of most of these presidents in the face of people on the Republican side in the House going after them, the only reason why Joe Biden yesterday said, or didn't say, but we learned, was holding up the shipment of thousands of huge bombs is because these kids have changed this whole debate in this country.
It's really interesting. Like, I really was disappointed in Biden when he spoke to the nation last week in the middle, when things were really hot with the colleges and universities. So a reporter asked him as he was leaving or at the end, you know, have these protests changed your mind on anything? And he just like goes, no. I was like, really? Because actually, one, it's not true, and two is, why is it bad if they did? I mean, obviously the strategy by the Biden administration now, it's kind of complicated to figure out right now, but the strategy is they're just trying to buy time on a variety of different metrics, given what's going on in terms of the ceasefire and discussions, and the holding up of the arms. You may not be able to draw a direct line, but Biden has a lot of support for that. And that is because young people, and it's not just, actually I should be clear, not just young people, it is the American polling, if you believe it, most Americans are able to protest Israel's war effort or condemn or criticize and still not be anti-Semitic.
That's huge.
Exactly.
That is huge.
Well, we talked about this right from the beginning.
You know, and the Democratic Party is
two
that way.
things. I mean, you can hold two things at once. I don't know why that's difficult.
I have said it before. It is
little tidbit
shameful
about Joe Biden. I was reading where in his younger days when he was at Syracuse Law School, he was walking by all the anti-war protesters and called them a expletive name. He was wearing a sport coat. He had his hair all done. So I don't think Joe Biden was ever much of a protest kind of guy. You know?
No, and it's like, it's just everyone's lost their head. It's just protest. I mean, it's a, you know,
well,
you
here's the thing.
You can't view it as a totality in isolation from where it is, what they're saying, who's a part of it. Can any, you know, on a lot of these student protests are led by Jewish students, something that a lot of people aren't talking about. But if you look at
talks about it almost every day.
it's just, and it's reflecting dynamics in the American population, the American Jewish population, which why Biden just says, no, that's not happening. It's just, it's ridiculous. He really does need to change the way he's approaching it, because his policies are reflective of at least something else going on.
Well, I think also too much police involvement. We're going to talk with Carol Rose about that.
Here's just one last thing about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are you saying it's not okay to peacefully protest as long as there's no violence and all that, that they should just be moved?
I think it is very.
I
think so. This is the contextual aspect of safety and security.
Yeah.
So if you asked me a month ago, are students in the yard in front of graduation peacefully protesting a problem, I would say no.
Okay.
And then you have a date on a calendar. It's just like Paris right now with the Olympics, right?
Okay.
And you know, I can walk around however I want right now in Paris. In a month, I won't be able to.
You
like,
can't
it's
block
contextual.
graduation.
But that's not because they're Palestinian. That's because every graduation is inevitably going to have sightline, hearing, and other rules about conduct for a mass event, and that's what it is.
Okay, so
and
you
the
can
interest
protest
by the college and university has been an interest that existed to have a graduation. has been an interest it's had a long time. Now, if the protesters want to be moved to a place where you don't have, I mean, I've been to these graduations for 20 years now. 30, I'm making up a number, I don't know, it seems like a lot of people, but like, 30,000 people, 40,000 people, that's fine too. But it seems weird to think that the university has no interest outside the substance of the conflict in having a sight line, hearing capability
for graduation. Okay, so it's okay as long as you're not interfering with something like a graduation or a big scheduled event. You can peacefully
protest. And you could have set those
rules
rules, as people have been saying a month ago, and then no one would be surprised.
Well, you know what the other problem, and then we're going to move on from this. How about I'm not going to ask you about it because you're in a weird position there over at Hart. How about seeing this guy? How about instead of putting out an email after a month of total silence, how about any of these people condemning what's happening from Virginia Fox and Elise Stefanik in the House of Representatives, standing up, meeting with these kids? By the way, while the behavior of this new President Emerson is despicable, not only in my opinion, in terms of the police most recently, but most people don't know, he had 13 students arrested on his inauguration day who were supporting the lives of Palestinian people. To his credit, according to a Globe report, he sat in a room for 5 hours and was verbally abused by students, which I respect. Yeah. The answer is let them criticize you, take some notes, respond if you choose, show your damn faces rather than hiding out.
I mean, I think one of the things that's been so disheartening, I said to you, but I am on leave. It was a pre-scheduled leave from Harvard, but if I didn't have it, I don't know if I would have tried to get one. It's been a rough year there for those of us who, it's just been a rough year in the sense that to be part of an institution that does not defend itself from former presidents, of that institution, like Larry Summers, from the Bill Ackmans of the world, from Republican potential vice presidential candidates. At no stage have I heard anyone say the value of a place like Harvard. And I mean, you're starting to now. My dean at the Kennedy School had a really, he's leaving, but had really nice remarks. And I think what's interesting to see sort of how because obviously I'm reviewing this, the colleges and universities are responding, is I think what these presidents are finally discovered is they don't just have one stakeholder, the check writer. They've got faculty, they've got students, they've got alumni, they've got the local police in some instances that are balking at being used, as you saw at University of Pennsylvania, and at University of Pennsylvania wanted to use the police. The police said, not now, and they had to go back and rethink how they were gonna, as I said, escalate to that very last moment. But I think next year, when I'm not there, I think if my university and other universities can begin to reset the value, because they must believe it, I believe it, and others may not believe it, the value of these institutions, that would be terrific.
Well, let me tell you one last thing. I'm sorry. Khalil Gibran Muhammad has been on our show a couple times. He's now a regular.
Great.
Yeah. He is attacked by name by Virginia Fox, the chair of the Education Committee in the House, the Republican, talking about, how dare he teach about systemic racism and then making up stuff about what he's doing. Last time he was with us a few weeks ago, he said nobody in university leadership has come to his defense while being attacked for doing his job well.
And plus, Harvard's got more money than God. It's not like they have to worry
and whatever.
about
it's
this
just more like that would be if they were listening. And I really like them. I really like Alan. I think he's fantastic. We could quibble about certain things.
I don't even know him.
If you're thinking about what's your summer strategy for what is probably not going to, maybe it will be done with the ceasefire, but maybe not. If you're thinking about your summer strategy, one of them is the university itself has equities, and we let those equities be defined by a former president of the university, by a billionaire, whatever, and those interests and that value was lost, and it impacted the students, who I think were elevated because of the adults, and it certainly impacted the faculty. I'm not the only one Did I ever tell you the quote of a colleague of mine at a Christmas or a holiday event? She came up to me after the fall semester. She goes, I would take 3 COVID semesters over that. And she was right, because we came together during the pandemic. And this is just like, you sort of feel like, you're part of an institution that seems to have lost its ability to define its incredible value. I have committed a lifetime to that place, and I'm not a good spokesperson. I guess I would say game on. We got to start pushing back, because otherwise people are defining us.
I couldn't agree more. We're
So
talking to Julia Kayyem.
So for people that don't know, we referenced it briefly, but President Biden has put this hold on an arms shipment to Israel because of the Israeli army going into that border section between
Rafah.
between Egypt and Gaza, where supplies come into Hamas, supposedly. So what do you think?
So it's really interesting what's going on, and I do, because 2 things happened yesterday, or 2 things were reported yesterday. One had happened earlier. The first is, of course, the delay in shipment from the last week, which was tied to the worries about what Netanyahu's strategy was for Rafah. The other is the State Department held up what was supposed to be the release of a report about whether there was abuses. I forget it's not war crimes, but it's another term by the IDF that would have put conditions or even stopped some of our arms shipment, and that also was delayed. So what the heck is going on? Why do we seem to be protecting Israel in one instance and then putting conditions? They are buying time. Everything that has gone on for the last 4 or 5 days.
In the hopes that there's a ceasefire.
You can't make sense of it, and that's the exact point. Everyone is playing for an audience. So Hamas says we're ready for a deal. We like this deal. That actually is not true. They did not like the deal. They wanted a different deal, but they say we like the deal, so it looks like Netanyahu's dragging his feet. Netanyahu says I'm going into Rafah. Did he go into Rafah? Probably not. He did, he's like, whatever. We don't need to start down that pathway. He does some bombings in response to Hamas at the gate or at the entrance to Rafah, but he has not started what we all worry about. Meanwhile, Biden is meeting with Jordan's king, delaying the shipment, but also not putting Israel out front with potential war abuses, war conduct abuses. And all you can make sense of is everyone just wants to keep moving forward so that we don't get to the Rafah moment. Because the Rafah moment, you think colleges are bad now.
I can't imagine.
But the Rafah thing ends up being, and I don't mean to be casual about it, it's a horror, but like the Rafah threat ends up being a chit for sort of every player. So they're trying not to play it yet. And so all I think about is there's lots of Palestinians who are innocent who wonder whether they're going to live overnight. That would be a good to delay that as long as possible.
Where are we with food and medical supplies?
So they anticipate, so it depends on who you talk to again, but it's clear, that Israel has utilized the sort of generic notion of supply chain to undermine the ability of there to be excessive humanitarian or adequate humanitarian relief. We saw a couple months ago in which their targeted attacks were clearly impacting humanitarian relief workers, so much so that some have moved out. Cindy McCain, who had been with the UN World Food Program, I saw her on TV yesterday, said that probably by the end of June you will have what's essentially called a mass starvation, which I think is some percentage of the population. Now, the long-term impact on these kids in terms of food, they never recover.
Yeah.
In terms of mental and physical health. So this is when people talk about over, I want to burst out laughing. Like, really? I don't think this is over, because you're just going to have a generation, and then you're going to impacted by this generations, but then you're also, the conversation to be had is, of course, what happens, what's phase 2, of which Netanyahu's phase 2 is, he wants to be in power.
One thing about it, since we have done nothing but criticize correctly Netanyahu's behavior, which I think is abominable, the one thing I have to say I'm with him on is when they said, you started to detail why they rejected the Hamas version of the ceasefire, what they had agreed to do when they would release, I think, 30 to 33 hostages, they wanted to include in that number hostages who had died.
Yeah.
And the Israeli government's position was that creates an incentive, or at least removes a disincentive to killing the hostages, with which I'm in total agreement. So on that one thing, I think he and his cabinet made the right move.
You know, maybe linking to the protest. I mean, people
Can
should
you imagine
take a look.
I'm sorry, if you want to, we had family members
I know.
of a couple of times now of one particular hostage, a sister who was released after 50-some days,
right,
and another relative who, can you imagine? This is 6 months. I mean, it's just unimaginable.
Not knowing.
But
not knowing.
Yeah, linking to our first part of the conversation about the student protests, take a look at the pictures of the streets in Israel.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to say that Israelis, you know, whenever I'm accused of something, you know, for what I would view as a benign statement or something, and I often want to say, like, the Israelis are saying this, right? Whether it's against
huge
Netanyahu
protests
or
about
against
him not focusing
humanitarian
on
or
the
the
hostages.
right?
And as you say, there are significant numbers of Jewish kids in the protests at the colleges, too.
In any case, Juliet Kayyem, thank you for your point of view, and thanks
you
for joining us today.
Thank
We
you
appreciate
so much.
it.
Thank you all for coming out, and happy birthday. Can't say it enough.
We have been speaking to Juliet Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, and the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book, The Devil Never Sleeps: Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. That book title becomes more relevant with every month that goes by. Juliet, up next. The ACLU is weighing in on campus protests, calling on universities to uphold academic freedom and free speech. We'll talk with the head of the ACLU of Massachusetts, Carol Rose, about that, plus a continuing effort to ban TikTok and more. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In her debut novel, Julie Min begins with the future to understand the past.
There's a way in which the past carries through with us into the present and into the future, and sometimes I think sustains a relationship through difficult periods.
My conversation with the author about her new book, Shanghai Landers, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Eversource, committed to helping businesses reach sustainability goals and lower their energy use through energy assessments and custom recommendations. Learn more at eversource.com. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing the latest therapies and cancer specialists who are experienced in your cancer. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the library on Friday. Doris Kearns-Goodwin joins us, and we cannot wait. We're joined now by Carol Rose, Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. She joins us regularly. Hey, Carol.
Hi, it's great to be
nice
here.
To
Thank
see
you.
you.
Carol
Good
Rose,
to have you.
thank you for joining us. So you and your colleagues at the ACLU have written and spoken a lot about these protests at colleges and universities around what's going on in Gaza. What'd you say?
Yeah, so the ACLU doesn't take position on foreign policy matters, so that's not the issue for us. But we do take very strong positions on freedom of speech and the right to protest and to demonstrate. And in the face of these protests that we're seeing, we're urging administrators and elected officials and the police not to go in quickly, as they have been in a lot of cases, and trying to break up these protests. Because, the old saying of, they buried us, but they didn't realize we were seeds. This really started, and I put a lot of blame on Elise Stefanik and the people in Congress who called in the college presidents and how it all rolled out. But when Columbia initially really rapidly called in the police in a pretty violent and armed way to try to quell the protests in Columbia, it just exploded. And now there's over 200 universities and colleges here and now overseas. It's just spreading like wildfire. And every time we call in the police to try to crack down, it just backfires. And we do have some examples of universities that are doing it differently. Brown, Northwestern, others. They're not.
They cut deals. The administration and the students cut deals, right?
No,
I thought they did.
Well, my understanding is they haven't necessarily cut deals. They've agreed to sit down and negotiate.
Well, my understanding, maybe that's true, but my understanding of Brown, correct me if I'm wrong, is Brown has agreed after these negotiations, ultimately the trustees will vote on divestment issues.
But they didn't agree to do it. They agreed to have a conversation.
Correct. That's right. I'm sorry.
And I just, and when we think about what is the purpose of a university or college in a democracy, right? It's to promote dialogue. It's to promote learning. And you can't do that if you send in the police. And I'm very concerned, the ACLU is very concerned that we're moving down a wrong path and that we're going to have a really challenging and potentially violent summer. So we really feel strongly that the colleges and universities need to consider different paths. And there are a number of colleges, like I said, Northwestern, I think Brown, and a couple of others have taken different paths, and they haven't had to cancel their graduations.
Do you want to talk about Mary Wu? Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, we asked her. Okay, you want to do it?
Yeah,
sure.
Mary Wu was with us yesterday talking about the pro-Palestinian encampment at Emerson College being forcibly cleared by the Boston police. Here's what she said.
And I'd say to unhoused residents, you have to comply with this ordinance that is on the books for health and safety. But if you are a student or if you are for a cause that we agree with, then we're going to look the other way. But that was communicated over and over and over again over the course of multiple days with many opportunities to say, please just comply with the ordinance, get rid of the fire hazard, create public access, and there's no issue whatsoever with protest. Ultimately, again, a decision that the situation could not go on any longer because we had tried just about every way to de-escalate and communicate that.
We should point out that Emerson protest was a little bit different because it was in a public way. It wasn't in a quadrangle or part of the college. So first, do you agree with the mayor because it wasn't a public way on the
Before you answer, we should say what she meant when she said we cannot say to unhoused residents, meaning what we did at Mass and Cass is exactly what we're doing here. That was her point.
So, a couple of things. It's less of a binary decision, like either we go in or we don't, and saying, we're telling you have to leave is not opening up a dialogue. It's an order. And so one of the things I think it's important to keep in mind is I don't think that the city just went in without any dialogue with the officials at Emerson. My guess is they did talk to the president at Emerson, and that if he had said, let's have a dialogue, let's create a place to have a conversation, to actually listen. I mean, we have learned throughout history, whether it's the civil rights movement or the Vietnam War era, all of these, maybe we need to listen, not to agree, but to listen. Remember how President Obama was criticized for talking to Iran, and they said, you shouldn't talk to Iran because we don't agree with them. And he said, no, that's when you do need to talk to people.
But I just
let me just finish. And I think that the anti-encampment ordinance, it has to do with tents. But if you actually look at what happened at Emerson, and we've actually filed public records requests, and there's so much social media video out there, to try to get a handle on whether the use of force there was appropriate. And I just want to also raise, because there is a difference between public ways and private campuses, right? But last night at UMass Amherst, where the police went in, one of the things I think was particularly concerning was the fact that they also tried to keep out journalists and legal observers and other people who weren't even involved in the protest, but were actually monitoring. And I do just want to say that, and so we're trying to get more information about what happened last night at UMass Amherst, which is a public campus. But I just have to say that around the country, these student journalists have just been amazingly heroic in covering what's happening, and some have been arrested.
Yep.
But I do think that we need to be mindful of that because they're going at the risk to their own safety at the hands of police, and trying to do a job which is fundamental to our democracy, which is being reporters. And I think we need to just mention that.
But I'm just trying to get down to the rules of the road here. I was talking about this with Juliet Kaim. It seems to me if you are not disrupting graduation or disrupting something else, and you are at you're on the private land in a private college, or even the quadrangle at UMass Amherst, and you're protesting whatever it is, and you're not being violent, and it's peaceful, why do we have to remove anybody?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it's really important to recognize that there's the legal arguments about what can a college do, or what can the police do, or what can the city do as a legal matter, and then what's wise to do as a matter of public policy and democracy. And I think here, to be sure, neutral time, place, manner restrictions. Each one is very fact specific, and whether it's a right of way or a public or a private, the ACLU is taking a look at that. But setting aside all of the legal arguments or whether there's too much use of force, we're looking at that. But setting that aside, the wisdom of it in a democracy at this moment, do we really want to be shutting down youth? All the complaints, the youth are disengaged, they're no longer interested in democracy, they've checked out. No, they haven't. They're very engaged. And whether we're talking about the Sunrise Movement or this anti-war movement, it's a very interesting moment for us to say, as a democracy, do we at least want to listen? Engage?
I'm sorry, I know I'm the ultimate broken record, so my apologies in advance. The reason they're doing this is because they're terrified of the people you mentioned before, Virginia Fox and Elise Stefanik.
Right.
And not one university leader in the United States of America has had the courage to stand up in front of a microphone and criticize them for their outrage. I mean, as Marjorie has said brilliantly, the line the Republicans in the House have picked up on, which is brilliant and working, is there's all this horrible anti-Semitism on the campuses. And there is clearly some that needs to be stemmed. But as Marjorie says all the time, did those same Republicans say anything when Donald Trump was saying find people on both sides, when the tiki holders were saying Jews shall not replace us, and killing Heather Heyer in Charlottesville? Not a peep.
Or when he
They're
ate dinner
total frauds.
with the neo-Nazi.
Well, and I think
not one university president, not one, has had the courage to stand up to
Jim,
these people.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because they're really abusing, and as Julia Kayyem pointed out, there are a lot of Jewish students who are also in part of these encampments. Criticizing the government of Israel and the policies of the government of Israel is the same as criticizing the policies in the government of the United States, right? And so, and we do all of those things. That's part of core protected political speech. And to the extent that when it crosses over, that's concerning, yes, and we need to call it out. But no one has had the courage to do. Remember during the McCarthy period, when Joe Welsh from then Hale and Dorr, I think it's Wilmer.
Have you no decency?
Have you no sense of decency? Joe McCarthy, and that
We
was
could
the
use
turning point.
a lot of that.
That was the turning point
Yeah.
historically. I kept hoping that some of these college presidents or the people they took with them would actually say, have you no sense of decency after all, Elise Stefanik?
We were talking, Carol, this morning. Now they're going after high schools
Right.
in New York City and Berkeley.
Because it's working.
Because they're liberal places. Berkeley liberal, I guess Montgomery County, Maryland. I don't know about Montgomery County, Maryland, but they're going to go after these high school superintendents or principals, wherever they're going after. I mean, don't they have better things to do, really?
Well, also, it's just so counterproductive, because this is rapidly moving away from any, discussion of actually what we need to be doing about as a matter of foreign policy, and rapidly becoming the students versus the state, the students versus the police. And that's very dangerous for the government. That's very dangerous for our democracy, and it's dangerous for our students.
Can we stay on?
I just want to make sure that people understand that the importance of a college and a university in our democracy is just so core and central to our democracy, and this is part of a larger effort to dismantle that and to dismantle our democracy. So we need to put it into the larger political landscape and the larger political context beyond just the Middle East or the campuses right now.
So speaking of the First Amendment, TikTok has filed a lawsuit saying that the decision by Congress, signed by the president, to shut down TikTok, I think it's roughly a year if it is not sold, is violation of the First Amendment rights. And it seems to me, this is not based in my legal research. It seems to me, if there was a proven, this is a question, not a statement, if there was a proven unrefutable national security threat by TikTok, which there is not, there's an allegation that it is, then that might, I don't know if override's the right verb, but you'll tell me if it isn't, override the First Amendment protection TikTok is claiming. But when the national security interest is speculative, and they may be right, but they could be wrong, the First Amendment wins out, TikTok wins their suit. Is that a decent analysis?
I think that's right on. I think that's spot on analysis. And we have this tendency in this country, I think, with China to, both romanticize them on one hand and then demonize them on the other, and neither are accurate. And we need to just see this in the larger context of the government's ability to censor. Maybe we're having a theme today. This day's anti-censorship day, Boston Public Radio. But it's really dangerous to give the government the power to shut down TikTok without justification, as you say, Jim, because then another government, another president might come in and decide they want to shut down all the other kind of social media and going after the press. And we know that last time when Donald Trump was the president, he had a plan. He executed against a plan to actually attack the press itself and to go after social media platforms and to go after the press. I mean, he tried to sue to shut down TikTok, right? And was in a Montana court said he couldn't do it. And so I think.
By the way, he's flipped his position because a major stockholder in TikTok is true.
It's true.
Is now a major funder
because that's
of
the
his
principle
campaign.
that we're talking about.
Exactly.
But I think it's really important when we think about these rules, and we don't just apply them to just TikTok, but we think about all the other social medias, and we think about not just the Biden administration, but all the other presidents that could come in. Suddenly, you begin to feel that chilling effect, and I think it's really important that we push back against this effort. And I think the courts, hopefully, will strike it down.
Can I, before we move to the next topic, why isn't there a college president who is going to, I assume, meeting nonstop with their board these days and saying, let's take a stand, but let's call John Doe and Jane Doe, who are president of those other places, and let's 11 of us with our boards of trustees hold a press conference
Wouldn't that be great?
tomorrow and stand.
That's great.
I mean, really.
It's a great idea, Jim.
From your lips to their ears, Jim.
Public relations.
Think you're
I'm
absolutely
obsessed
right.
with this. I am really obsessed that nobody is standing up for this freedom here, and nobody's standing up to the, again, be careful. I'm not saying there are not problems of anti-Semitism on college campuses. Of course they are. They've got to be dealt with. Jewish students who feel threatened have got to be protected. There's no doubt. But that these people who tolerated these neo-Nazis doing what they and saying what they said about the Jews, they're the ones with a message protecting us from anti-Semitism is just grotesque.
Yeah.
I'm done, Marjorie.
Okay, we're talking to Carol Rose from the ACLU. So people may be aware there's a trial that is being televised, not the Trump trial, of course. It's the Karen Reed murder trial over at the Norfolk County courthouse in Dedham. She's accused of running over her Boston police officer boyfriend and leaving him in the blizzard to die. You guys at the ACLU have sought this brief on prosecutors wanting a buffer zone at the courthouse. There's been a lot of crowd interest in this. I think I've seen people over the bridges on 93 South with waving. Yeah, I guess if you're for Karen Reed, you wave a pink something or whatever. Seems a little sexist, but in any case, about a buffer zone at the courthouse. So what's this all about?
It's another First Amendment issue.
Another First Amendment issue. So initially the court, courts and judges have a lot of leeway to try to keep their courthouses safe, right? And so legit, and to try to make sure there are fair trials and no witness intimidation, those kinds of things. So the courts give themselves, as you might imagine, a lot of leeway to make the rules. They initially put in a 500-foot buffer zone, and the rule from a First Amendment perspective is we think that people should have the opportunity to have their message heard by their intended audience, right? So you can't do it if you're 500 feet away. So we came and offered amicus. It was really it's like a letter form. It's a very brief, friend of the court brief, and said, 500 is too long. You need to reduce it. And they reduced it down to 200, and we submitted a subsequent one-pager that said, could you take it down a little more? And they said no. So they went from 500 to 200. I think, does the ACLU think that's too big? Sure, we do. But I also think that the courts are likely to be somewhat deferential for themselves in determining what kind of a buffer zone that a given judge or courthouse needs.
I remember years back there was always big stinks about the buffer zones at abortion clinics.
Right.
How big were they? I think they were less than 200 feet.
Well, there was a whole range of them. There was like 200 feet, but then if you were at the Brookline Clinic, you were going to be across the street, and then they tried to have a roving buffer zone where that would follow people around in a bubble, which was completely unenforceable. So these are the kinds of things that, again, as a democracy, we're trying to get the balance right between making sure that there's safety, and particularly at a place like the Brookline Planned Parenthood Clinic where there'd been a murder and a shooting. You have to make sure that we can keep people safe. And at the same time, in a democracy, we want to keep that ability for people to raise their voice in a peaceful way.
So why has this case become such a cause celeb in Canton? Is this because of Turtle Boy, the blogger that has been writing so much about it?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with sort of social media, and it's somewhat salacious, and it has all the elements of social media, clickbait. And so I think it's very, popular for people to watch it for that reason. The ACLU doesn't have a position. I haven't been following it close enough to know what the facts of the case are. But we just wanted to make sure that if people want to have an ability to protest, that they're not pushed so far away that they're kind of behind the building.
That Turtle Boy alleges that this is a conspiracy by law enforcement to convict this woman, and that she is not guilty, and that it's a cover-up by the police. I believe that's his argument.
I think that's
You know, speaking of your involvement in buffer zones, I'm curious to know, are you going to get involved in the case in New York? Last week, there was one supporter of Donald Trump outside the courthouse. Have you taken a position on how far he or she should be? I think it was a woman.
I'll
should be from the
I'll check with my colleagues at the New York Civil Liberties Union.
One person.
One person.
You know, speaking of that, you have no involvement in courts, cameras in the courtroom, that debate, do you, or do you?
Oh, we think cameras should be allowed in the courtroom.
Okay.
Because it's a matter, again, why our democracy shouldn't be secret.
Exactly.
Unless there's some kind of a reason where someone's life is at risk, or due
So what do we
process is
need?
at risk.
Do we
but
need
it's
some
not.
congressional intervention here? Because judges, as it is, can make up their own minds. This judge in New York made up his own mind. We could have had cameras in this courtroom. He said no. Could have had audio in the courtroom. He said no. As people know, you can't see the Supreme Court. You can hear them.
Right. And that was a fight to get audio of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That was a big fight. And I
By
think
the
it
way,
should be
including a
open.
couple of liberal justices who testified in favor of cameras when they were nominees and opposed cameras as confirmed justices.
What do we need?
Does this robe make me look fat? Is that what
What do we need to change that? Because there were a few trials in Massachusetts. The Tsarnaev trial. There was
Whitey Bulger.
Whitey
Whitey
Bulger trial.
Bulger?
There was I think you could see the defendant on TV, but that was about it.
I so agree with you. And we've talked a lot about people losing faith in the court, especially the Supreme Court, because of all their ethics violations. But I think in general, the
very
more
impressive.
we can have, the more we can have it open.
So what do we need? What do we need to get that
I think we
open?
need to pass a law. There ought to be a law,
Congress.
right? Yeah, it would have to be Congress.
But we've been told by Judge Gertner is the judicial conference, whatever the hell it is, that is chaired by the Chief Justice. He unilaterally could determine that I'm 99% sure I'm right. We'll check it with the judge when she's on next. Chief Justice Roberts unilaterally could decide that federal courts should allow cameras in.
Because one last thing, you hear this all the time. I didn't mean to be rude to the defense lawyer who called up and said, the O.J. Simpson, it was a circus. That was 30 years ago. It had unique aspects to it. World famous athlete, O.J. Simpson, all that kind of stuff. As I said to him, I've covered many trials that we had to televise, and there was no big deal. You don't show the jury.
Right.
The judge decides where the cameras are going to go, and everybody mostly follows the rules. It was fine.
Right, and there are reporters in there. There are people doing the sketch artists. I mean, I'm going to get hate mail from the sketch artists union, but I think that it would just really reinforce our faith in the court system.
And the jury.
Transparency is almost always better.
Yeah.
I think you do have to balance it against the right to a fair trial, and that's going to be important. But that, I think, can be done more with exception handling than with a blanket rule.
Yeah, there's something very reassuring about watching the judiciary in action.
Oh, it's
most
exciting.
of the time.
Or not reassuring. Whatever it is, and you should see the damn thing. So before you go, I know you guys are the ACLU of Massachusetts is very excited about this mass data privacy bill. Could you briefly describe, and then I'll ask you about what concerns me about it. I'm not sure I even understand it well enough. What's in it?
So the most important thing, that this has just come out of committee, now it's going to go for a vote, and we really want people to contact your legislator and say vote yes on this. So this is a bill that would basically provide privacy protections for people in Massachusetts. And this is tremendously important because, again, as we begin to prepare for what can Massachusetts do in the event that we have an authoritarian federal government, or other states who are doing things like having bounty hunter laws to track people in other states. We want to protect people's privacy so that they're not tracked when they come to Massachusetts or when we live in Massachusetts. And this is something we can do now. It's incredibly popular. Our polls show 92% of the voters of Massachusetts would like to have more privacy protection. So let me tell you what the Massachusetts Data Privacy Act would do, Jim. It would limit data collection, ensure that companies don't collect and process more data than they need. When you go online and buy something, they just give you what they need to do your order, and they don't turn around and sell everything about you. It would treat sensitive health and biometric data with extra care so that we're not discriminated against in getting insurance or getting treatment or those kinds of things. It would limit the sale and sharing of personal data. And it has accountability measures. So more than 40 organizations are supporting this. Attorney General Andrea Campbell is supporting it. Everywhere where we go, everywhere that you live, where you work, where you go, you can be tracked just with your cell phone, not to mention other things. This is a bill that would ensure that your privacy is protected. It wouldn't harm you in any way in the sense that you could still get your map applications and have directions. You could still, buy things and use your credit card. What it would do is prevent the data brokers from turning around and stealing and sharing your data. And we already know that, for example, anti-abortion groups have been buying up data to try to track people who go to other states seeking abortion care or reproductive justice care.
Here's my one concern about this. Even though, from how you describe it, it sounds like a major step forward, it limits this, it limits this, it limits that. It seems to me the most important thing, we had this discussion with Andy and Anko about the national data privacy effort in Congress. Shouldn't there be an opt-in which sort of puts the control in the hand of me as to whether or not, I don't want my data limited, I want my data not given to anybody, zero, unless I affirmatively, I know, you think I'm
No, I think
he's a slitherer.
Saying that I want to opt in to have you sell my personal data is different than saying I have to opt out.
Right.
Because, how much time do any of us spend actually reading the privacy policies?
Yeah.
Or when I want to buy something, do I
Right,
read
so
the
why
fine
doesn't this
print?
go that far?
We don't.
Why doesn't this go this far and give me the right to say, none of these, I don't want it limited, nothing can you have
Oh,
from
you're
me?
saying you want it to be, I thought you were saying.
Why shouldn't that be included, an opt-in provision in
Well,
law?
I'd love to be able to go that far, Jim, if we could get that through the legislature. But right now, these are just the most fundamental, like your healthcare data and where you go and that kind of data. If we could just get that, it would be great. And I want to do a shout out to the committee chairs, Tricia Farver, Bouvier, and Senator Michael Moore. They saw this threat that's on the horizon. We can do it now before it becomes an actual threat. And I think we should do it now. And I really hope the legislature gets this passed because now's the time to do it. Let's not wait until after the election in November.
Well, you know what? Now's the time to do it? Because they leave on July 31st for 5 months. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Carol Rose, it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very
so
much, Carol Rose. We've been speaking with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Up next, our eye to the sky with Kelly Beatty from Sky and Telescope. Elon Musk apparently is doing a better job than Boeing in outer space. We're going to talk about that and also something that I still can't understand. What is a black hole and why should I care? Kelly Beatty is next.
Morning, you wake up to a new day.
Gorgeous day we have on tap temperatures in the
A new world.
All 9 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that
A new Boston.
So many things going on in the city.
Whatever the day brings, whatever the change, we're here with you at the very start of your day.
With the news you need and the local stories that bring us all closer together.
Wake up with us and a fresh perspective.
GBH's Morning Edition, weekdays from 5 to 10, here on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Q Legal, providing legal marketing solutions for law firms in Boston and beyond. Marketing strategies include websites, social media, video, and search. You can learn more about their services at qlegal.com. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
I'm Boston Public Radio producer Aidan Connolly, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library on Friday. Doris Kearns Goodwin, whose latest book is out and went to #1 in about a nanosecond. She's going to join us to talk about both her book, her husband and his work, which is the subject of the book, and the state of our country and world. But right now we're joined live at the BPL by Kelly Beatty to discuss topics where we have great interest, Marjorie and I, but very limited knowledge.
Very limited.
Kelly, thank you, is the senior editor at Sky and Telescope. It's great to see you, Kelly. How are you?
Great to be back. Thank you.
Wonderful to have you.
Hello, Kelly. So you said to me before we went on the air that a month ago today was the eclipse, and we didn't get the full eclipse here in Boston, but you went off to Austin with, I think, 200 people?
Yes.
And then you got clouds in Austin?
And then miraculously, right as totality was about to start, we got a clearing in the sky. We saw all of totality, then the clouds clamped shut, and we didn't see anything else.
Oh, wow.
It was nothing short of miraculous.
That is unbelievable. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So were you sweating bullets at that
Very
point?
much so. And a lot of people in Texas, you know, because that's where climatologically the best odds were for clear skies. There was a big storm system. A lot of people around me got completely skunked, and we're very, very fortunate.
So describe it for people.
Oh gosh, it's the most dramatic celestial event you can ever experience. The sky goes dark, there's a black bullet hole in the sky surrounded by this electric wreath of gas. It gets cold, the stars come out. It's just something everyone should do at least once in your life. And unfortunately, the next one isn't until for 2.5 years, so you can bide your time.
Where do you have to go for that? Spain? Is that where you're in Spain?
And the other thing that some people have said when I've read these stories is that when you look off to the right or the left, you see the sun shining at a distant point from you on either side, and then the darkness that's right where you are.
You are literally standing in the shadow of the moon. And beyond that shadow, it's daylight. And so, yes, you can see like twilight all around you.
Isn't that wild?
Boy, that's incredible that the sky opened up and then it closed. That is really spectacular. Some soil, bring it back to analyze. Why are we excited about this research into the far side of the moon? What's it going to tell us?
Right. This spacecraft went into orbit over the weekend, over the last day. It's called Chang'e 6. Chang'e is the Chinese moon goddess, very appropriate. And so its plan is to scoop up about 5 pounds of lunar soil and bring it back to Earth. Now, this isn't the first time the Chinese have done this. They did it 4 years ago, and it was very successful. But where they're going, ironically, into a crater called Apollo, is because this is the deepest hole on the backside of the moon. We can't see it, but there's an enormous crater, 1,600 miles across, from here to Florida, across. And it likely has exposed at its bottom little bits of the lunar mantle well below the crust that have been left there exposed for billions of years. So the hope is, by bringing this stuff back, we'll understand much better the early history of the moon.
What did we learn a few years ago when you said they did a variation on this?
Because they landed on the near side, the side we can see, and it was very successful. In fact, a result just released is that they found in this sample a fair amount of water. Now, there shouldn't be any water on the moon, and they're not sure where it came from. It could be from comets. It could be from the solar wind making a chemical reaction. That is TBD. But the fact that there is water there on the moon is always an exciting prospect.
Amazing.
Okay, here's my first stupid question. I thought lots of these little planets and their satellites rotated, so why can we not see the far side of the moon?
You know,
glad you asked that rather than me, by the way, because I have no idea.
If we had a little bit more floor space and wireless headsets, I would show you. The moon spins once every time it goes around. So if you kind of follow my hand here, it's spinning as it goes around, once per orbit, and that it's in a locked situation with the Earth. So only 1/2 of the moon will ever face the Earth.
Wow.
That's pretty incredible, actually.
It's pretty common in the solar system. You know, we're actually pretty lucky to have the moon for a lot of reasons that we won't go into, but it is the nature of this that we only see this one side. It's not the dark side of the moon, it's the far side that we can't see.
I bet you there's something you think. We have, after you, Cy Montgomery, the great naturalist and one of our favorite people. One of the things we're going to talk to her about is some pandas coming back from China to the United States. This Chinese effort, if I remember reading about it, involved a number of other countries, Sweden and a whole bunch of other countries. Why is it that when it comes to science and exploration, we have an ability to cooperate to some degree at least, in this case in a pretty intimate way, with other countries, and no ability, what is it about science that separate? You know what I mean?
This goes back to a long time, but you were talking about Brown University long ago. There was a time when we couldn't talk to Russian or Soviet scientists too. And actually, this is kind of true with the Chinese. There was just an agreement to share these samples that have come back. We're not actually supplying them with hardware or experiments. We, the United States, other countries are, we are not. But you know, you just have to stand back and marvel at the success that they have had, the Chinese, through a whole range. There's a Chinese space station in orbit. Who knew, right? And so because it's a nationalized program, there's a lot of money and power behind it. It gives the country prestige, technological bragging rights and such. And so I think that is the spacefaring nation to watch in the years ahead.
Talking to Kelly Beatty from Sky and Telescope magazine.
So Kelly, here's 2 headlines. Boeing finds 2 serious problems with Starliner just weeks before launch. Booster valve glitch derails first crewed launch of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. Boeing has had some problems with its airplanes as well. So this doesn't bode well for what they're doing in space. And Jim was joking before the show, Elon Musk maybe he's doing a better job here
SpaceX.
than Boeing.
Well, a little background here. You know, we retired the space shuttles, and we still need a way to get up to the space station. We still used Russian launch rockets, actually. But NASA, about a decade ago, let out 2 contracts, one to Musk through SpaceX and one to Boeing to develop basically a ferry to take astronauts to and from the space station. Musk has, with his SpaceX, has been much more successful. There have been like 12 missions already. Boeing has had all kinds of development problems. I will say this last one, it's not Boeing's fault. It's the rocket, not the spacecraft itself. But even so, it's many years. They expected to be launching these in 2017. It's 5-7 years behind schedule, and they're not there yet. This was supposed to be the first crewed flight, kind of a test flight, to start regular missions up to the space station sometime next year. It'll happen. You know, it's just, they're just being cautious.
Why are there 2 contracts? Why not just pick? I mean, in this case, it was good they had 2 contracts. Maybe that's why they did it, because one's not succeeding and one is. But is that the reason for doing 2?
You know, it's just competitiveness, and suppose Boeing had gotten the contract alone. Then you'd be stuck waiting for the other one to catch up.
If you had $250,000 available, would you buy one of these seats on one of these things?
I would not.
Why?
I would not, because I'm getting enough of a thrill following the cosmos just from here on the ground. I actually, you remember the Teacher in Space program?
Of course I do.
Yes.
Right? Did you know there was a journalist in space program?
I think we did, actually, but who was that?
That was, on the heels of that, in the mid-1980s, I was one of the 100 semifinalists.
Really?
Yeah, that was back in a time when I really didn't care about sticking around quite so much, but yeah.
So wait a second, when you say you didn't care quite as much about sticking around, so is the reason you wouldn't do it now is because you do care about sticking around?
I had a really specific goal in mind with that Journalist in Space program. Sorry to derail the conversation.
No, we want to hear about
I
this.
wanted to be aboard when they launched the Hubble Space Telescope, because what better kind of person to have aboard than someone who knows everything about that thing? That the judges didn't quite see it that way. But then they canceled the program soon thereafter in the aftermath of the loss of Challenger.
But you didn't answer my question. Is the reason why you're not in favor or don't need it now is because you actually like living? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's that I think that there is a lot to be said for maximizing the value of what you've got here on Earth. And the time it would take out of my life to go do that right now is just not a place I want to be.
What kind of when you competed, we were in the final 100, was it like an essay kind of thing?
It was grueling. It was regional, and so I was in the Northeast/New York region.
Oh, Dan Rather?
I had Walter Cronkite.
Walter Cronkite?
Is that true?
Oh my God.
And Geraldo Rivera.
Oh my God.
And all of the journalists from like the New York Times and all the networks were in my pool. So it was
Barbara Walters?
I don't think she was in it yet.
Okay, so here's a trivia question that Marjorie cannot answer.
Okay.
When Geraldo Rivera's name was Jerry Rivers,
yes.
and he left legal services in New York City to become a reporter, who took his job? You have 5 seconds. Marjorie?
Jim Browdy.
That would be correct. I did succeed Jerry Rivers at legal services in New York.
That's one of many
City.
stories I've heard multiple times now.
Well, I'm going to hear it a few more times before we retire, Marjorie, so get used to it.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking to Kelly Beatty from Sky and Telescope.
I want to get back to the Elon Musk
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Here is a person who has taken his personal wealth and made a commitment. 2002, he said, I'm going to build a spaceship to go and colonize Mars. And he's still on track to do that. He's now launching more. The key is the rockets that he's built are very dependable. They're almost entirely reusable. It's a very economical model that NASA has yet to emulate. And so NASA is very happy to have Musk in the mix to do the dirty work, if you will, of launching all the satellites.
When you said he's well on his way, or whatever you said a minute ago, I just read a story we talked about on the air about 2 weeks ago that somebody said that colonizing Mars, somebody who has expertise like you, said it's a joke. The pressure is such that you'd explode. Nobody could live on the damn planet.
Well, you need a spacesuit for sure.
Well, okay.
Okay. It's not like
wear
you
your
go up-
bathing
it's not
suit.
Like, I mean, Jim, see The Martian. It's
Yeah.
a pretty good.
I've seen The Martian.
It's a pretty good.
Is that with what's his face? The kid from Cambridge.
Matt Damon, right.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
And
Matt
read the
Damon,
books.
right.
Why is Musk doing so well? He's got more money to spend, or hiring better engineers, or what's going on?
He hired engineers that develop revolutionary rockets. So like this Starship that we see, the most powerful rocket on Earth, is not just one gigantic engine, it's 33 of them clustered together.
Wow.
And so he built this one engine. It actually runs on methane and oxygen, which is very efficient. No one's really done that before. It's just innovation, innovation, innovation. And the fact that they're reusable, he's able to launch them very economically because he just, shines them up and launches them again.
He's reprehensible, a character as he is in many ways.
He's a
changed
genius
the
in other
world.
ways.
I mean, he's
yeah. So why would NASA, seeing this, not think maybe we should try this too? Is it just bureaucracy?
It's largely bureaucracy
and inertia.
And think about this: in the years after Apollo, NASA had built this massive infrastructure. They had Marshall Space Flight Center and Johnson Space Center and the Kennedy Space Center, all geared toward keeping people in space.
Right.
And so they needed a new human mission, and that became the Space Shuttle mission. Right. We needed something to keep those places busy. And so, with all the civil service requirements and all of that. And so I think it's an inertia thing, preserving the territory.
Okay, so can we discuss this comet? It's coming here in October. I am really excited. Anything I can see. Marjorie and I, by the way, went to the roof of GBH
to watch
with
the
a bunch of our colleagues.
Yep.
And even though it was only 90-something%.
It did get cold.
It did, and it was spectacular.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't Austin, Texas, but it was really great. So you're able to predict with incredible precision. If I said to you, tell me when there's going to be a solar eclipse in 200 years, you could tell me the time and the day.
Yes.
Why can't you tell me with similar precision when I can see that comet in the sky, assuming there are no clouds?
I can tell you exactly where to look. I can't tell you how bright it's going to get.
But you also can't tell me the exact time, can you?
I can tell you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, I can tell
Okay,
you.
so tell me what you know. What is this thing?
This is a comet that has been jointly named after Purple Mountain Observatory in China and a robotic telescope called Atlas in South America that is it's on its way in. It's going to pass between the Earth and the sun, roughly at the orbit of Mercury, in late September, early October. The thing is that if it follows its current trend of brightening, it will become visible to the unaided eye. You'll be able to just go out and see it.
What would you see? What is it? What would we see?
It would be a bright spot with a tail.
That's
right,
wow.
Like a little fan. Now here's the unknown. Because of that geometry, we're looking through the comet at the sun. Imagine you're driving and you're going through you have a dirty windshield and the sun's on the other side. Your windshield lights up with all the dust. That's a scattering process. This comet could do the same thing and become much brighter than predicted if it's got a lot of very fine particles of dust. This is the part we can't know. I can tell you where and when to look.
Where and when do I look?
You want to look, it'll be close to in the pre-dawn sky by early October and then flip and be visible in the evening sky after sunset. And that's like the second week of October. We'll meet on the roof and we'll have the telescope.
I'm there.
Who names the comets?
They're named after the discoverer. It's actually called Tsuchinshan.
But who gets to name them, though? Is it
whoever
governments?
the discoverer? No, the
international.
international.
After the discoverer. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It's the astronomers at Purple Mountain Observatory, which is that Chinese name, and
That's
also
good.
this.
That's
robot.
good. I like that.
So, if you discover a comet, Marjorie, it'll be Comet Marjorie.
You'll be the first one I'll call.
Right.
Let me tell you when that happens to me. Absolutely.
Okay. Go ahead.
I mentioned before that even though it's been explained to me before, I don't really understand about black holes and why I should know about them. So I can't be the only one.
Well, you didn't tell them enough. We spent 4 minutes and 19 seconds today watching the video, which we thought was going to cause us to actually know what we were talking about when you got here.
Didn't help.
Do you have any idea what we were looking at?
No.
None. Neither did I.
No.
Not a clue.
Yeah.
Is it a NASA thing? Is it a NASA thing?
It is a NASA thing.
Okay.
Yes.
So
it's a simulation for those listening or watching. It's a simulation of what it would be like to fall into a black hole with a camera, not a person. A person would become what we call spaghettified, where your feet would be stretched out and you'd die before you ever got there. But this is a hypothetical camera going into a black hole.
What is a black hole? Let's start with the basics. What is a black hole again?
If I knew, I'd have a Nobel Prize. It's a point in space of mass, but it's infinitely dense, and therefore it's only a point. It's what's called a singularity. And it's so powerful that it is warping space-time so that not even light can escape when it gets nearby. That's the black hole part of it.
You get kind of sucked in.
You're right, you get sucked in. And what the simulation shows is that as you enter, what you see is less and less of what's out there. The light is still coming in. So like you're past the point of no return as you enter this black hole, which there is a point of that. And you can still look outside and see galaxies and stuff, but you are not seen from the outside because you're past that point. It's a pretty good video. Not the only one I've seen, maybe not the best I've seen, but it's the here and now.
How close? Oh, sorry.
So what goes in? What falls into or
Anything.
gets sucked into black
so
holes?
just think of it as a really big, massive object.
Yeah.
Anything can go into orbit around it.
Okay.
Anything can get sucked into it. Can pass by and its orbit will be changed, much like the sun. If it got really supermassive, even more than it is, our sun will never become a black hole. Safe to say, you can bet on that. But there we don't know the physics. We've never been able to fully understand what that singularity is, what goes on at that point.
So the things that get sucked in, they just stay there forever?
Yeah, mostly it's just like star stuff and dirt and gas. And
so suppose a spaceship gets sucked in.
A spaceship gets sucked in, it would be, first of all, it would get stretched out and
Spaghettified.
Right? And it would eventually just become part of the mass of that black hole.
Okay, before you go, where's the closest? I'm not comfortable with this. Where is the closest black hole?
Yeesh.
I mean, roughly, how far away are we talking?
I would say, yeah. I think the nearest ones that we know of are of order 1,000 light years away.
Okay, so that'd take a long time to get to.
Yeah, it would take a long time to get to.
Like,
right.
okay, and so I should not worry that there's going to be one in our neighborhood coming by anytime soon.
But you know, there is a theory that there are a lot of like really mini black holes floating around because they can be of any size.
They can?
If the Earth were suddenly to collapse into a black hole,
yeah,
right?
That'd be troubling.
It would be
Wouldn't
like,
be? It would be.
Right, it would be very small.
Yeah.
The point is, if
then we'd be really small.
We'd be
really tiny, spaghettified and tiny.
So the point is, if these really exist, if these mini black holes really exist, they could be floating by us all the time, and we just don't know it.
Really? Well, that's really upsetting. Can we end with that? I mean, that really.
Oh, look, there goes one now.
Oh, that's really funny.
Okay. Somehow I don't see you getting sucked into a black hole.
Can I tell you something? This is, before you go,
be a good story,
you explain stuff as well as anybody. Having said that, two things I still can't explain. I can't explain crypto. Can you explain crypto?
No.
Okay. And I still, despite your genius, and I mean this, I have no idea what a black hole is, even though you just told us what. Do you know what a black hole is?
Jim,
no.
I have no idea what a black hole is.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better.
A texter says that we should watch Christopher Nolan. He just did Oppenheimer. His movie Interstellar.
Yeah.
And that will give us an idea of black holes.
Nah.
No?
Nah.
Oh, okay. Forget that.
Matthew McConaughey does not come back from the other side of a black hole. I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen.
By the way, just so I don't feel so bad, this is really kind of her. Our colleague Zoe, I said I don't understand black holes. I don't understand crypto. She says, I still don't know how a fax machine works. So there you go. So everybody's got their own space, if you know it. Kelly Beatty, you're fabulous. Thanks. It's great to see you.
Great pleasure as always. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Kelly Beatty. He's senior editor of Sky and Telescope. Lots of people loved hearing you, Kelly, so you got big fans here among the texters.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being with us. Up next, our favorite Hancock, New Hampshire resident, naturalist and author Cy Montgomery joins us for another edition of Afternoon Zoo. We're going to talk about sperm whales and phonics, orangutans healing themselves with plants, and get to the bottom of how to handle intimate moments when you've got a dog on your bed. That is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In her debut novel, Julie Min begins with the future to understand the past.
There's a way in which the past carries through with us into the present and into the future, and sometimes I think sustains a relationship through difficult periods.
My conversation with the author about her new book, Shanghai Landers, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan, with you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And MBA Builders, partnering with clients to help bring the home they envision to life through their design-build approach. MBA Builders, building relationships. Learn more at buildwithmba.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library on Friday, as we've said, Doris Kearns Goodwin, we are dying to talk to. Fabulous new book and no better analysis of the state of affairs in our country, because she's written about some pretty horrible times as well. Joined now on Zoom by naturalist and author Cy Montgomery. Her latest book is Of Time and Turtles, Mending the World Shell by Shattered Shell. Hey, Cy.
Hey there, Jim. Great to see you, Cy Montgomery, as always. So we have a little sound of these sperm whale clicks. They're recorded by this author, James Nestor. We're going to play the sound for people, and then you can tell us what this is all about. Here they are.
You know what he's talking about? They're talking about the worm in RFK's head. That's the first time I understood anything like that. That's incredible.
That must be it. And it's a tasty worm, too.
Exactly.
Tasty worm, yeah.
I'm sorry to upset.
These are toothed whales, so they might not be as interested. I thought they were saying, can you come and babysit at 3 o'clock on Thursday, which is probably more like the kind of thing they actually do discuss. But this is so interesting. I've been reading for ages, and you have probably also been following the effort to understand what whales are saying. And we know that our humpback whales that we have in New England, that they sing, for example, and that their songs actually have structure like our songs do, and they have refrains, and they change as they move. This is a totally different kind of whale. This is a sperm whale. It's the largest toothed whale. It's like 60 feet long, the adults are. And they are as different from other whales as, a marmoset might be from a person, or a lemur from a person. But what are they saying? Well, this new report shows that they are speaking in, not like in pictographs, but they're speaking essentially in like a Morse code or an alphabet. That it's different from song, that these little itty bits of things, which are similar to our words, but limited in number, can be combined to create an unlimited, theoretically, number of ideas as words are ordered in sentences, or as the alphabet can create words. And this, to me, is really thrilling.
Cy, I know we discussed this in another context with you about some other. By the way, I made a mistake before. Her latest book is obviously Secrets of the Octopus, which we've had her on with Warren Carlyle about, but they're both fabulous. But I think we had this discussion with you before. Let's assume that scientists not only know that they're communicating, which now they say they do, but figure out what they're saying, and it's X number of years in the future. Is there an ethical debate in your world about whether or not we should ever try to communicate with any of these animals if we did understand their method of communication? Do you know what I mean? You do know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, for ages, most of the interactions we've had with whales have been us murdering them one way or another, intentionally or not. And humans are always trying to figure out, how can we use this new piece of knowledge to advance our cause, and who cares who we mess up along the way. However, I feel like these are wise beings with their own fascinating culture, and I would love it if they could tell us how to better behave, because they've done a much better job getting along with each other and other species in the sea than we have. So that would be the question that I would pose to the whales. Tell us what we're doing wrong and how we can fix it.
But wouldn't you worry, I guess where I was going was, wouldn't you worry about the reaction that a whale or any other animal whose communication system you figured out, what reaction they might have to an alien, I mean this sincerely, an alien creature trying to talk to them, essentially, you know?
Right, absolutely. Well, as you probably know, both of you, when you travel and you try to master a few words in the new language and you walk up to someone and you want to say, pleased to meet you, and instead you're saying, your sister has big smelly feet. So you could mess it up. You also could give them wrong information, or the communication could fall into the wrong hands, and you could tell them something that would really upset or mess them up. One of the good things we might be able to figure out is, why do whales and dolphins beach, and how do we get them to go back out? I mean, I would love to know what they're saying so that we might help them survive in this world that we've made so difficult for them.
That is a great question. You hear that often, that a whale has beached itself, and you don't know why. I mean, I suppose sometimes they're sick, but maybe not always.
Or they may be coming to the rescue of someone who accidentally beached themselves.
Yeah.
And I think knowing how social all of the whales are, that could well be it. And then by the time that you get there to help your fallen comrade, you're in the same terrible position that they are, and you're not helping them. But meanwhile, you've added your distressed voice, and everyone else is coming in. So, and they may be loath to leave their stranded comrades behind. A lot of times when people try to tow them back out, they'll just turn around and come right back. And I know how that would feel. I would have a lot of trouble leaving, my family member or pod mate on the beach to die. So, but what is going on here? This is so cool though. This is actually they studied 60 whales. That's kind of a big number, and what they've discovered is that they vary the rhythm and the tempo of the clicks, and then sometimes they'll add a click at the end that is kind of like a suffix. It seems like we're just inches from starting to decode this for the first time. And I grew up reading Lilly on dolphins, John Lilly, who had people living with captive dolphins, and dolphins would fall in love with the research scientists and all kinds of problems. And I've just dreamed of this forever. It is a great time in some ways to be alive. And when you read about science like this, even though there's a lot of sad and upsetting things happening in this world, I'm just thrilled to be alive in time to see what we're starting to learn about these animals.
Well, here's something else that I learned. I learned so much when I talked to you, Simon Montgomery. This is about an orangutan, which was rubbing these chewed up pieces of leaves as medicine for a face wound.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And it makes total sense when you realize how many other animals do use medicinal herbs and other things, such as crushing insects, and some will even use things like minerals to heal themselves. But when you see this happening in an orangutan who looks, just like that guy that took you out for the prom a few years ago. I mean, they look so much like us, and then they're doing something so like us. They found that they were using this thing, it's called yellow root in Indonesia, and it is a medicine that humans use. And the humans probably figured it out from watching orangutans. Local people know a ton of stuff that scientists don't know. So this particular guy, his name was Rackus. He had a wound on his face. He was a big male. Was he a Sumatran? I think he was a Sumatran.
Yes, that's where it says Sumatra. Yep.
So what he would do is he would pick this plant that they don't normally eat. They normally eat fruit. It had no real nutritional value. He would chew it up and make it into like a poultice that he would put onto the wound, and he would also, I think, swallow some of it. People have been using this for centuries and centuries and centuries in Borneo. So it makes total sense, but it rapidly healed this wound. And I've worked in Indonesia with orangutans, and you get a little insect bite and it goes septic instantly. But this wound closed, and it was a big wound. It was like 1.5 inches across, and it closed in 5 days. And a month later, there was no evidence of any scar.
Wow.
So it's working better than anything that I had in my first aid kit. But tons of other animals, including birds, including insects, use medicinal plants. And we probably discovered the use of aspirin from bears. Bears will methodically strip the bark off a willow tree and chew it up and use it as aspirin, because that is in fact the source of salicylic aspirin. And birds will like bathe in ant hills and let ants crawl through their feathers. Well, why would you do that? Well, ants have formic acid, which is essentially sort of like an insecticide and an antibacterial. And it's a way of cleaning your feathers, which have to be in condition, because you're flying. And if things aren't perfect, flying is a rough thing to do. Lots of other birds, lizards, elephants, chimpanzees, all use plant medicines. And it's probably where we got a lot of our herbal knowledge.
It's unbelievable. We're talking to Cy Montgomery.
Okay, tell us about the giant pandas.
Oh, yay, they're coming back. We are going to have some pandas again. I don't know when, but they know who's coming, and I'm probably going to butcher their names. It's Yun Chuan, a 5-year-old male.
From China.
Yep. And I think it's Xin Bao, who's a 4-year-old female. And this is going to replace the last pandas that departed from us in November. The National Zoo flew back their pandas, and they're coming to San Francisco.
Why does China? We discussed China cooperating with Kelly Beatty a few minutes ago in terms of space stuff. I thought China was pulling pandas out of the United States because of our conflicts on other issues. Why the reversal here? Which is great, obviously.
Well, they may feel, if they have any sense, which apparently they do, that even if we have disagreements on human rights and trade, there's a very productive partnership between the U.S. and China on panda conservation. So even if you don't treat your humans particularly well and you don't care about the trade deals, at least they want to keep their panda population healthy, and we do too. So that's something on which we can cooperate.
I asked you this question before, and I think because you're such an incredibly kind person, your answer was an attempt to not make me feel bad. But I think I told you when I was in Beijing a while ago and went to the Beijing Zoo with my family, I had a panda sit on my lap. And it was one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced in my whole life. I shouldn't have done that, right? Tell the truth.
Well, if you're walking through the forest, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how any sane person could resist it, Jim.
That's what I figured you'd say. But if it wasn't me and you were just having an honest one-on-one conversation, we shouldn't be doing things like that, should we?
I have had situations like that happen to me. I had a baby gorilla try to crawl into my lap, and I had to get up and move. I had a highly endangered parrot copulate with my head. And that probably wasn't a good idea.
Was it good for you, or was it not?
It was not good, man. They have these immense claws, and they're whacking you with their wings, and claws. They're digging into. Who wants to be sexually assaulted by a giant parrot in the middle of the night when they're trying
Another
to
parrot, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
Not also.
Well, you wonder why they're endangered. If they would just leave my head alone and get it on with somebody of their own species, maybe they'd have more luck.
Well, that's a perfect segue.
Yeah, speaking of getting it on, apparently the pets can get in the way of human beings getting it on because, why? Dogs, mostly, I think we're talking about here, correct?
Yes, and when you think about it, you're somebody's pet, and your person is in your bedroom with somebody and something bad is going on. The person's yelling, "Oh my God," and they're thrashing, and sometimes the big one's on top of the little one. I mean, that can't be good. So I wouldn't blame most dogs for rushing in to try to help the situation. And if, on the other hand, animals perceive that something fun is going on, who can blame them for wanting to join in? This looks great. They're having a great time. I need to be part of this. So from the standpoint of the animal, it's totally understandable.
You know, by the way, just so people don't think we're as low rent as we actually are, because we're going to discuss that with our listeners in a few minutes. This story was in the Washington Post.
It was.
This was not like from Truth Social or something. This was the Washington Post talking about how dogs, as you say in particular, interfere with intimacy of human beings.
I mean, I've heard these stories a million times where somebody, has a new date and they bring the date home and they're involved with a, new romance, and they put the dog outside the bedroom, and the dog spends a half an hour scratching at the door and barking and thrashing, and it upsets, that there goes that romance. Or when just people will hug each other, the dog will come rushing over and start wagging its tail, and maybe they want to get hugged too. I don't know what that means, but I've heard these stories a lot.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah, animals can be very jealous. Parrots too. And actually, my friend Matt Patterson, he had a pigeon who adored him, but constantly attacked his mate, his wife.
There you go.
And I know of parrots who actually had to be given up because they would fly through the room to attack somebody who was messing with their mate. It's all about, resource
So
guarding.
what if it's your own dog? I mean, lots of people have dogs that are couples. What are you supposed to do with your own dog?
Well, whoever you're dating, you might have to put them down.
But I mean, suppose you and your husband were to get a new dog. I mean, you've got a dog, Thurber, but that knows you both. I mean, if this is the family dog,
what's your question?
What are you supposed to do if the dog gets upset?
There's a couple of strategies that you can employ. It's much harder if you've already got the dog. The dog owns you.
Right, that's right.
The cat owns you, and then all of a sudden you're having this person who, is causing you to shriek, "Oh my God," and thrash around with the So who can blame it? But if you're already there and part of a couple, it's much easier. You can usually give the dog like a delicious bone or an interesting Kong toy to lick, or something else to do that's more interesting.
Okay.
Zoe, our colleague, obviously has thought a lot about this because she just put a message up to us, and I want to know if you agree with her. She says dogs like to be included, cats just like to watch. Is that your experience?
Oh gosh, well, did you read the one about the cat that had quite a reaction to the lady's sex toy?
No.
Yeah, she had a vibrator.
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, go ahead.
The cat, she didn't say exactly what the cat did, but I think it must have, their ears are different from ours, and it must have made some sound that we can't hear that was very exciting to the cat. But yeah, cats aren't likely to just leap on your bed and try to stop this because they don't do that sort of thing. Dogs are more likely to try to get involved. And sometimes, this is very interesting, my best friend, Liz Thomas, who is 92 years old and wrote The Hidden Life of Dogs, this big block book. She told me that when she and her husband were dating, and they would always bring their dogs everywhere they went, the dogs, who lived a very natural life, and they were allowed to select their own mates and have puppies and dig a den and all that kind of stuff. Well, when she and Steve would get romantic, the dogs would start getting into the spirit of the thing. And
that's lovely.
Like not getting involved with Liz and Steve, but with each other.
Oh.
So it was like a double date kind of thing.
What a heartwarming story.
Like a double date.
Speaking of double dates, we felt we owed you a right to respond to somebody who had something to say about you, but it flowed from this. We asked you, when we knew that your husband, Howard Mansfield, was going to come on the show, he wrote a fabulous book called I Will Tell No War Stories, What Our Fathers Left Unsaid About World War II. We asked you what you thought about the book, about the author. This is about a month ago. Here's what you had to say, Cy.
Oh, I've slept with that guy.
That's right.
In fact, I'm going to do so tonight.
Okay, so we felt it was only fair when Howard was on our show to talk about his book that we would ask him about you and your book, Secrets of the Octopus, which came out in March. Here's Howard Mansfield, who happens to be Cy's husband. Here's what he had to say when we asked him whether he had heard of the other author, that'd be Cy Montgomery.
Jim, my life is nothing but octopuses, turtles, critters without end. When Cy comes on and does the afternoon zoo, that's been my life for 30, 40 years. I live like in a postgraduate animal seminar.
Okay.
I thought that was
So, do you have
great.
anything you want to say to this guy, this other author, the Howard Mansfield? Want to react to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll see you tonight.
Cy, it's great to see you. Say hi to Howard. It's great to see you both. Thanks so much.
And we loved your husband's book.
Fabulous
It was great. Thank you so much, Cy. We've been
See you,
speaking
Cy.
with naturalist and author Cy Montgomery. Her latest book is, I think, the wrong latest book of Time and Turtles, Mending the World Shell by Shattered Shell. And Secrets of the Octopus. Okay, I'm sorry. Secrets of the Octopus. She's got two very recent books. So we just saw Time and Turtles a little while ago. So two of them up there. Up next, since we were so serious in our first listener call-in segment of the day, we're bringing the salaciousness back in the 1:30 hour by opening the lines to hear from you. We just talked about this with Cy. How do you keep your pets, particularly your dogs, from interrupting your sex life? Is this a problem? 877-301-8970 is the number to call and text about your dogs and you in those romantic moments. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, in her latest play, Dale Orlander Smith looks at the human condition and how we're apt to find meaning in life when we're confronted by death. And we all know the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, but what do we know about the woman who created it? Chasing Beauty, a new biography, reveals a woman of privilege and purpose with a penchant for art. Author Natalie Dykstra joins us. That's today on The Culture Show at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Johnson & Wales University, valuing intellectual curiosity and hands-on learning for 110 years. You can discover more at jwu.edu. And Revision Energy. Sunbug Solar is now part of Revision Energy, a solar installer committed to being a renewable energy partner for New England and working to fight climate change. Learn more at sunbugsolar.com.
We felt we needed a little Marvin Gaye for this segment. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Exactly. Back at the library Friday with Doris Kearns Goodwin. Here's a quote. This is from the Washington Post. I repeat, not some salacious rag. The Washington Post, the only place where we definitely won't be bothered is in the shower. The shower is sacred. The Post article is titled, When Pets Get in the Way of Getting It On. We just talked about it with Cy. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Lines are open at 877-301-8970. We want to hear from you. From scratching at closed doors, as Marjorie described, to that shell-shocked stare they sometimes give you when the clothes start to come off. How do you handle intimacy interrupted with your pet? We got a text earlier this morning, said you could either crate them, you could lock them out of the room, or you could include them. That was one texter's position. The number is 877-301-8970 is the number. Were you surprised this is in the Washington Post?
No, because I think
I was.
I think. Well, I've heard stories. I've heard a lot of great stories, from people that had these experiences, especially if they were having a new date over the house, and the dog didn't particularly like the new date over at the house, and things did not go well, and often the romance didn't go well either. And then they talk about how people, have dogs sleeping on their beds. And apparently a lot of, particularly women, feel very guilty about moving the dog off the bed because the dog is on the bed. So the question is, do you have all three of you on the bed, you, your partner, and the dog, doing whatever you're doing there? And a lot of people do that because many people feel guilty about putting the dog in the crate.
Well, also, we read in this Washington Post story, a lot of people have a dog on the bed because they actually want to discourage their partner.
That's right.
In fact, you know who actually got a dog this morning? Melania. Did you know that? She did. She got a whole kennel worth of dogs
she got
this morning.
a big Burmese dog or something, some massive dog, so nobody would fit in. But that's the title of from one story from Great Britain. Turns out we're using our pets as an excuse to skip sex. And this story also goes into what I think a lot of us know, that many people actually prefer their dog to their spouse anyway, so it's a good thing to use as an excuse. So how do you handle this? 877-301-8970. Now, Cy had some good suggestions. Give the dog a nice treat that the dog might like. Yeah. A new bone or a Kong with some peanut butter in it or something like that. There was a Reddit post about this whole thing too. Well, the person said she was concerned that her 14-month-old pooch has been really blocking her sex life with her fiance. She said, if I close him out of our bedroom so I can have some private time, he cries and cries and cries on the other side of the door, which is obviously killing our mood, she said about her Havanese mixed pooch on the Reddit post. She said, if we even kiss or hug each other in front of him, he will run over from wherever he is napping and start to jump around at our feet, wanting to be part of the affection. So they had a really difficult time with that situation.
What'd they do?
Well, I guess that they said they were telling you had to emotionally regulate your dog.
What does that mean?
I don't know how you do that. But what the bottom line was, is that put the dog in a crate. Put the dog in the crate and practice crating the dog more often while you're home. Maybe you put the dog in the crate for a half hour.
Or you and your partner get in the crate.
Or you and your partner get in the crate. Yeah, that was you can put the dog in the crate. And a lot of people I know with my current daughter's dog, when I put the dog in the crate, we put like a sheet over the crate. So so she has a little privacy. Nothing. She just has a little privacy in there, and she doesn't see you walking by. If it's bedtime and you want the dog, if you don't want the dog to sleep in your bed, and you have the dog in the crate, and you forget something in the kitchen, you have to walk by the crate. You see, but if it's covered, she won't see you.
The number is 877-301-8970 if you want to call or text. You can remain anonymous. You can give us a phony name, because all the texters apparently have been anonymous so far, which I understand. One said, no issues since I posted a big picture of a gravel pit over the bed. That's one thing. And do you want to read the next one, or should I read the next one?
Go ahead, Jim.
I prefer to remain anonymous. The person says, my dog gets off the bed as soon as she hears the buzz of the vibrator. I think it reminds her of the dog groomer's clippers. Another good tactic. 877-301-8970. Have you encountered the problem? If you have, how have you dealt with it? 877-301-8970.
This is from Rebecca in Boston, reminding us of this great scene in the great movie Best in Show. Remember, there's an erotic couple. They both have braces on. They're complaining that the dog doesn't like it when they have sex. And then they go to their dog psychiatrist kind of person with their new dog. And while they're talking about this whole problem, remember what the dog is doing?
I do not.
Humping the psychiatrist's leg. That's a great one, Rebecca. Thank you very much for that.
Speaking of that, we talked the other day about Triumph the Comic Insult Dog. Do you remember when the Triumph the Comic Insult Dog went to the Westminster Dog Show?
Yes.
And what did it do?
Started humping all the dogs.
Humping all the show dogs, all the dogs that are winning international contests. 877-301-8970. Do not be shy. We're not going to out you. We just want to know how you deal with a problem that is serious enough that I would argue the best paper in America, the Washington Post, determined that it was appropriate to do. So I should read this text or what? Oh, the second one is, hi, Christy Nome here. Love the show. I have a really simple solution to this.
That's
to this problem. That's actually pretty clever. That is pretty clever.
Okay. 877.
Did you see her yelling at the Fox Business host yesterday?
No.
Saying this is a ridiculous interview. Stop asking me this question. Again, she wrote this in her book. The Puppy Killer is who we're talking about.
Okay.
I was hoping to have a day free of lurid details after Stormy's TMI testimony yesterday. Can we talk about tipping or some of those favorite old chestnuts, daylight savings? How about the legislature and its long vacation?
We touched on the long vacation
I guess this
today.
person is not interested in stories about sex involving the dogs or involving the dogs in the room.
But this is a really, by the way, this is a really practical thing. I don't know why everybody's so hesitant. It's a problem that apparently exists for a ton of people, and I assume some people have solutions that are relatively foolproof. So
Okay,
share
well,
them with
this
us.
is not a good solution, but this
What
was
is
what
it?
the person says. I live by myself, so I don't close any doors in my house. My dog refuses to leave my bed when my quote-unquote friend comes over. We have to pick him up, place him outside, and close the door, where he scratches at the door the whole time we were in the room. Once we open the door, he comes in and lays between us, facing me. I mean, that's what a lot of people do.
But
They
the
put dog-
scratching
that's what the person on Reddit says about the little Havanese dog is scratching and crying the whole time outside the room, and it kind of ruins the mood, and people don't like that. That's why the crate is suggested as an alternative, unless you don't care and the dog is in the bed with you, which would seem to me to be
I think it's a problem.
a little crowded, wouldn't you say?
Let's go to Lee in Westboro. You start things off here on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for the call.
Hi, thank you. I'm a frequent caller.
Thank you.
And the most humane and effective way to deal with this is definitely to crate train the dog, and that has to happen when the dog is just a puppy.
Yeah.
So as soon as you get a dog, if it's a puppy especially, start training him. If it's an older dog, you're going to have to find out what its past was and how it reacted to crates. But crating them can be so helpful when you're traveling, if you have guests over, your delicate china out, let alone being in bed. And if they're trained to the crate, they'll be fine.
Yeah, you got to start early. You're absolutely right, Lee, but they can come in very handy, when you're going out to dinner or you're going out, especially if someone's allergic to the dog and you can't have the dog in your bed all night long.
Lee, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Gary, our colleague, just walked into the studio. Is it okay that we said Gary? I assume it is. He just walked up to our studio in Brighton, brought up an interesting angle. What to do when your pets get it on. He had to separate his turtles, Frank and Floyd, because they were too amorous with each other. By the way, I've seen videos like that of people in the animal kingdom, like non-human
There you
animals
go.
in the animal.
Well, you talk about that movie you watched
Is
obsessively.
that
Metamorphosis or something like that?
Whatever, is unbelievable.
Dung beetle sex is what
It actually it is, and
Okay.
it is. In all seriousness, I know I've said it before. It's pretty erotic if you're into, I guess, dung beetles. Let's go to Kara. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome. How you doing? Hi.
Welcome. Happy springtime.
And to you.
Monsoon.
Yeah, whatever it is. Hi. How are you?
Good. I'm doing okay. Thank
Good.
you very much.
Sure.
I love your segments, by the way. Yesterday was stellar. Today's even more stellar.
We're incredible.
Especially
Thank
with
you.
Asai Montgomery.
Yeah, she's great.
And Beatty. Beautiful Beatty.
Kelly Beatty, yeah. Are you like a radio critic, Kara, on the side, or what do you do?
Of course not.
Okay, I was only kidding.
You know I'm not
No,
critical
we
of
know.
you
So
guys.
what
You
is your
teach
take
me.
on
I don't
this
even know
issue?
how to- I wouldn't even know where to begin there.
Nor would we.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I'll just tell you this. Okay, I love the last caller. What's her name, Fran?
I can't remember, but whoever she
Okay, I
was,
think
she was great. Yeah.
Okay, the last caller was wonderful too. So the thing is that she is spot on. The crates are great, but you do have to start when they're very young.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do know, this is what anecdotally, okay, so
Sure.
I'll give you quick stories,
Please.
short, sweet and brief, so other
I hope
people
so.
can get on. Sorry,
Yeah,
I know.
it's okay.
I'm not always like that.
No,
but-
it's fine. It's
okay,
totally fine.
so I'm trying.
Yeah, well, you're
Okay.
doing great. It's okay.
Thank you. I try. Okay, all right.
Yep.
So I really love all my pets, all of them. All of them with their quirks, their weird things,
Yeah.
Some had more quirks than others, but that's okay. I've had both, kitty cats and doggies.
Yeah.
My feeling is that I had a golden, she could care less.
Yeah.
She'd just get off the bed and then proceed to walk away and curl up on another place and time
Well, that's a good thing.
in our house,
Yeah.
like on a beautiful oriental carpet, and
course.
just lay, sprawl herself out there and go to sleep.
Okay.
That was Harley.
Harley.
Then we have another one, my kitty cat. Okay.
Katie. Yep.
Now, she was so very little that she also didn't care.
Oh.
And what I do is I just very carefully give her kisses before we'd engage, Bo and I would have any kind of relations and intimate relations.
I understand what
and
you're
I
talking
just put her on her little, I always had places for the dogs and kitties, but I didn't expect them to stay there all the time. I didn't care.
No, sure.
And then she got used to that, and it was all really cozy. And it was, those LL Bean, pet beds they have for kitties and dogs and whatever else you have. But anyway, so I don't think it's a problem unless they get really hyper.
Yeah.
And that's, why they
What do you mean, your partner or the pet?
No, the partner doesn't get hyper
Okay.
at all. I don't go out with hyper partners.
Okay, the pet. Go ahead.
So the pet, because
Yeah.
if that was the case, I would have known early on.
Sure you would have. I shouldn't ask the question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the pet, because what happens with pets is they think they're nervous. Their nervous systems are so huge.
They are. They're huge.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
I
everything,
do. Of course I do.
sensory, olfactory sense from head to toe, or however you want to say it.
So Kira, if I may, that was like unbelievably interesting to me. But what is the moral of the story? I mean,
Okay. So the moral of the
So you
story.
kiss your cat on the mouth or something before you do whatever you're doing with your beau. Is that the message?
Like, I think you give them a little attention
Yeah.
to make sure that they're understanding that
Yeah.
you love them too, and
Oh.
that this isn't just like all in one. Like,
Okay.
You're not going to go away
No.
forever, and you're not getting hurt.
Not at all.
Because what happened with one beau is that their dog was so smart. First of all,
Sure.
her name was. Oh, I should not say.
Oh, don't say the
It's
name.
okay.
That'd be a horrible.
Because anyway.
What's the name of the dog?
She's awesome. What?
What's the name of the dog?
Oh, Brandy.
Brandy. Okay.
And,
a lot of
and
Brandies. That's
Brandy
fine.
was awesome.
What did
And
Brandy
so
do?
Brandy got really upset. Like, either she would or she wouldn't. But she thought, and I told him, I said, wait a minute, man. This isn't working. He's like, what do you mean? I want it. Come on. I'm like, forget it. I'm like,
Okay,
you're gonna
I got it.
have to realize, like,
Okay.
the dog.
Brandy's owner is on the other line, Kira. We got to take him. Kira, excellent as always. You're an excellent storyteller. Thanks for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it.
Hey,
That's Kira.
thank you for calling, Kara.
Thanks so much.
The texter has a good idea.
What is it?
Send the dog out for a pack of smokes. I like that one. Nancy from Arlington said, our dog doesn't sleep in the bed. He sleeps on the foot of the bed. The dog just walks out of the bedroom, annoyed as can be. On a rare occasion, he'll stay and he'll sigh nonstop.
By the way, some people are texting saying that this is not only ruining intimacy, destroying the relationship. This is Paul from Fort Lauderdale. I dated an Italian guy from Tewksbury. That was your first mistake. Until his Italian greyhound decided to get involved in the relationship, especially in the bedroom. And Paul and this Italian guy are like no more.
Well, I
like
think it happens to a lot of people.
It does?
If they come over, they're first date, and they're in the bedroom, and the dog
It isn't like they endorse Trump or something. Go
No,
ahead.
the dog is scratching and clawing and barking at the door
Yeah.
all night long, and then he attacks the person when they come out of the bedroom. I think probably the date does not go well. And it doesn't.
Sounds very familiar. to
Well,
this
it happened to
situation.
somebody I know. Yeah,
Who?
it was terrible. Somebody I knew.
Oh, come on.
Are you kidding? I'm not going to tell
Who?
you. Somebody
was
I
the
know.
dog's name Brandy?
No, the dog Brandy. Do you
Brandy
know-
was Kira's.
Oh
thing.
no, it was not.
Just
named.
want to see if it was the same
Do you know
guy.
this?
No.
The texture says Napoleon was bitten on his leg by Josephine's dog when he first got into her bed on his wedding night.
It was
Left
actually
a permanent
Josephine that bit
scar.
him on the leg, I think, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Let's go to Bob in Plymouth.
Bob
Hi,
in
Bob.
Plymouth. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Marjorie and Jim, how you doing? Marjorie, listen, it's very simple. You can crate the dog if you want, but just ignore the damn dog. What's the problem?
Well-
You're women. You can't just stop every time the dog is whining
Yeah.
and go feed him. You got to focus.
You got to focus.
Focus. That is
You gotta
focusing
focus.
is a good idea. Bob, thank you for that. Anonymous texter said, I bought my dog a director's chair, which is a pretty good line, too.
Remember the movie 10? You put Bolero on the stereo nice and loud and put the dog in another part of the
10
house.
was Bo Derek. Remember
Yeah,
Bo
Bo
Derek? That was about 80 years
a long time ago. Yeah.
She did.
I don't know.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
John
John.
knows everything. I mean, you were incredible, John. Bo Derek is apparently still alive.
Okay. Lori from Rhode Island. Oh, a lot of people are talking about Kara's call, Jim.
Well, that was those are pretty great stories.
Yeah.
You don't agree? They were pretty great stories about Brandy and the other one and the other one and the other one.
Our little Shih Tzu poodle, Scott, has an
Whatever.
uncontrollable attraction to her stuffed animal, Jack. When my wife and I need private time, we pull Jack out of the cupboard, and everybody's very happy.
Really?
pull Jack out of the cupboard? I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I thought they meant he put him in the cupboard because it was such a little dog, but that doesn't happen.
Well, the number is 877-301-8970. We only have a couple minutes left, so if you have any instructive advice for your fellow listeners, we would much appreciate you share it with us.
Several people are saying that they do use the pets as an excuse not to have sex with their...
Well, by the way, that was a major point in the Washington Post thing. Is you get the dog... And, do you know that some people don't have sex with other people, rent a dog? Have you read about that, by the way? Just wanted to see if Marjorie's paying attention.
No. 4 in 10 put the pet on the bed when they're having sex. That means they're
intentionally put the dog on the bed?
Well, they leave the dog on the bed. I should have said that.
Okay.
They don't move the dog. Women are much more guilty than men about moving the dog off the bed or moving the dog in the into the crate.
Well, aren't you always guilty when you throw the damn dog off the bed, whatever the motivation is? It's horrible.
You are.
They want to be there.
Yeah, and they also say that when they talk about quality time, they reveal how many hours a day they spend quality time with their significant other as opposed to the dog, and everybody's spending more time with the dog than they are with a significant other, Jim. So I guess it's sad.
Well, you're among them. We discussed this just the other day. One of the most popular covers ever in the Boston Herald when you worked there.
That's right.
Was the Christmas Day thing with you and Harry the Pea, best dog from sea to sea, on your lap in this idyllic pose. This little tiny dog and you sitting around.
Yep.
At Christmas time.
We were very tight, Jim.
It was absolutely
beautiful. We were very tight. So I think that we have not really solved this problem.
I think we've solved nothing.
Okay. We're out of time.
Kira, can you call? Oh, no, the show's over. I was going to ask her to call back because actually those are the best stories we heard in the whole segment.
A lot of people are texting and say you did a nice job talking with Kira, Jim.
She was fabulous.
She was fabulous.
She was the only one who had some fabulous stories to tell about her own experiences and her own successes. So we urge her to call again soon.
Okay, the show is over.
We
have a podcast, though. If you haven't had enough, you can listen to us 24/7. We have our podcast, which is called Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by NBC Political Director Chuck Todd, former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrew Cabral, former Massachusetts Education Secretary Paul Revell, Boston Globe film critic Odie Henderson, and MIT economist John Gruber. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, who knows everything, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to the BPL team, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Carly Corcoran, Isabella Karen. Thanks to our host at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Thanks to people that came down to the Boston Public Library to see the show. We really appreciate it. We want to remind people that when we're back here on Friday, we're going to be joined by Doris Kearns Goodwin, who's got a spectacular new book.
Got to finish the book by Friday.
Yeah, talking about the 60s. Her late husband, Dick Goodwin, was very involved with JFK, Jackie Kennedy. They visited Castro. She has all these incredible
Advising
stories.
presidents in his 20s and writing historic speeches for them. It's
he
pretty
was
incredible.
Quite precocious. And you all know Doris Kearns Goodwin. She's written a million great books about the Roosevelts, Lincoln, the Kennedys.
She also has a ton. She has a ton to say about this pet issue. So we're gonna, as America's revered historian, we'll get into that with it. We're done.
The Culture Show is on right after us with Jared Bowen. It starts right after the 2:00 news right here on 89.7 GBH. I am Marjorie Egan.
What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Boston Ballet School, dedicated to providing an inclusive environment by offering a range of programs to students of all ages, abilities, and household incomes. bostonballet.org/education. Ever wonder what the future will look like? Ari Wallach goes on a journey to find out how we can build a more sustainable future for each generation. Watch A Brief History of the Future tonight at 9 on GBH2.
GBH Sustainers, we can't thank you enough for your ongoing support. And if you've received a new